Chapter 107. When Ting snorted and said, "How can you be envious of something like being poisoned? However, according to what you said, that girl is also quite pitiful. Although we are orphans, at least we have our own parents, but she—" Chiyu laughed bitterly and said, "I don't even know if I have parents or not. Why don't I see you pity me? Who knows, maybe I was also created." When Ting said snappily, "Don't try to gain my sympathy. You have inherited Kiran's bloodline. If it wasn't a natural birth, it would be impossible. You must have parents, but I don't know why they abandoned you." Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a trace of gloominess. "Let's not talk about this. I'm living quite well without parents. Alright, my beautiful Miss Fox, now you're not angry, right? We should start. I've been waiting for you for a long time, and my desire has long been dissatisfied. You're so annoying. Let's start. You have to concentrate. The fusion is based on you. Only when you can better accept my energy can we gradually shorten the fusion time and become more harmonious." Chi-Yu nodded and said, "Come on." A faint red light shone from Wen-Ting's body, and the temperature of the hot spring suddenly began to rise. Chi-Yu laughed bitterly and said, "I won't be cooked before the fusion, right? If that's the case, I'm afraid I'll be the first Kiran to be cooked in history." Wen-Ting shouted, "Concentrate." Chi-Yu's heart trembled. He also knew that this was not the time to joke, and quickly gathered his thoughts. He concentrated on feeling the energy fluctuations from Wen-Ting's body, and the light in his eyes flickered continuously, waiting for the fusion to come. This time there was enough time. Wen-Ting was not in a hurry to fuse with Chi-Yu. She fully mobilized the energy in her body, and presented her energy aura and energy circulation method to Chi-Yu without reservation. The energy fluctuations became more and more intense. Looking at Wen-Ting's raised right hand, Chi-Yu gathered his thoughts and waited for her palm to come. Just as the two of them were about to enter the most crucial step of merging, under the influence of Wen-Ting's energy aura, Chi-Yu, whose senses had been greatly enhanced, suddenly realized that there seemed to be a pair of eyes staring at him and Wen-Ting from above. The temperature in the air suddenly dropped. Chi-Yu was shocked. He knew that he couldn't wait any longer. He hurriedly moved towards Wen-Ting's direction. What Chi-Yu felt, Wen-Ting naturally felt as well. There was a strong red light. She placed her right hand on Chi-Yu's shoulder. During the first fusion, they needed to connect their blood to form an energy bridge. However, it was no longer necessary now. Wen-Ting's body shrank instantly. The red energy shone with a sparkling light. As the light flickered, it had completely fused with Chi-Yu's body. At the shoulder, the arm with red scales appeared again. Unknowingly, Kiran had emerged from the Kiran bead. It draped over Chi-Yu's back. The hot spring in the pool instantly evaporated into steam. Wrapped in white steam, Chi-Yu silently rose into the air. The feeling of having energy was really wonderful. The wings flashing with golden light on his back spread gently. Almost in an instant, his body was brought into the air. "Have you seen enough?" Chi-Yu's left hand quickly reached into the snowstorm in the air. Relying on his enhanced senses, he grabbed at the person in the air who was watching him and Wen-Ting. A low cry of surprise rang out, and a graceful figure swayed gently like a swimming fish. Chi-Yu's determined grab actually landed on empty air. His fingers had already made contact with the other party's body, and from the hemispherical shape and softness, he was very clear on what he had grabbed. He thought to himself, "Has my breast-grabbing dragon claw reached the advanced level? Even blind grabbing can find the target so easily." However, although Chi-Yu felt good about himself, he also became vigilant. He knew very well how strong the energy contained in his grab was. It was not as simple as a grab. At the same time as his left hand reached out, Kiran's energy aura had already formed a large invisible net that enveloped the other party's body. However, the final result was a failure. When his fingers touched the other party's body, Chi-Yu clearly felt the other party's body shake slightly. The energy became extremely smooth. Even though he quickly withdrew his energy, he could not stop the other party from tumbling out of his energy encirclement. The graceful figure did not stop at all. It quickly fled into the distance. At the same time, the wind in the air suddenly became stronger. Even the snowflakes in the air instantly became the size of goose feathers. Under the influence of the wind, they swept towards Chi-Yu's body like a tornado. Those were not ordinary snowflakes. Under the influence of the wind, the frozen hard goose feather snowflakes were like pieces of sharp blades. There was no need to doubt their cutting ability. Chi-Yu did not know how long he and Wen-Ting could last in this third fusion. However, he was very clear that in the face of an enemy that suddenly appeared, he had to end the battle quickly. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Once he and Wen-Ting's fusion ended, Wen-Ting's body would be temporarily weakened. He would also lose the ability to fight. He was afraid that he would be at the other party's mercy. Therefore, when the opponent that he could not see clearly appeared, the thundercloud force in Chi-Yu's body had already begun to operate crazily. A green light appeared first. A tornado surrounded Chi-Yu's body and floated out. However, the tornado that he used was in the opposite direction of the opponent's tornado with snowflakes. The strength of the energy became the key to victory. Under the rotation of Chi-Yu's green wind, the snowflakes that were rushing towards him were immediately scattered. At the same time, the snowflakes that blocked his vision disappeared. Chi-Yu clearly saw a white figure wrapped in wind escaping into the distance like lightning. Want to leave? Not so easy. There was no need for the assistance of the thundercloud force. The golden wings on Chi-Yu's back flapped violently. His body seemed to move at the speed of teleportation. In an instant, he appeared in front of the white figure. Due to his speed, the white figure was so fast that it almost crashed into Chi-Yu. The golden-winged rock soared 90,000 kilometers into the sky. It was the strongest flying ability among all the ferocious beasts. Although Chi-Yu could only use a portion of it now, it was enough to increase his flying speed. With the notebook function, he was not like the golden-winged rock, who was restricted by the huge Buddha Chi and could not use its full strength. Chi-Yu blocked the white figure. He was not surprised. What appeared in front of him was a girl who looked about the same age as him. In such cold weather, the girl was actually wearing a pure white dress. Her exposed arms were as white as the snowflakes in the air. Her pretty face was pale with panic. Her eyes looked empty, but it was undeniable that this was one of the most beautiful girls that Chi-Yu had ever seen. Her temperament was somewhat similar to that of Wen-Ting. They were both elegant and moving. However, compared to Wen-Ting, her body had a stronger chill. It was a chill that came from the bones. Even just by looking at her, one could feel the chill. After being blocked by Chi-Yu, the girl almost did not hesitate to attack him. Her palms were like butterflies, filling the sky with palm shadows. Countless snowflakes revolved around her body. The temperature in the air instantly dropped by more than 10 times. The icy chill wrapped around Chi-Yu without reservation. Chi-Yu smiled faintly and placed his left hand in front of his chest. Black and silver air currents filled the air, and a Kirin mirror with a diameter of 0.5 meter appeared out of thin air. He only moved his left hand slightly and used the Kirin mirror to cover every part of his body. No matter how the girl attacked, her palms could only hit the smooth Kirin mirror. No matter how strong the chill in her palms was, she could not break through the Kirin's octatic treasures, which had the strongest defense. After blocking a few attacks, Chi-Yu knew that he had to take the initiative to attack. After all, his current strength did not completely belong to him. It was best to end the battle quickly. Just as Chi-Yu was about to attack, the girl realized that her attacks could not cause any damage to Chi-Yu. She shouted, "Snowless glacier." The snowflakes and the wind in the air seemed to have stopped at the same time. Just as Chi-Yu was stunned, all the snowflakes suddenly disappeared. The temperature in the air dropped significantly. This time, even Chi-Yu could clearly feel the cold. The girl's right hand was placed in front of her chest. Her originally fair palm had turned a transparent blue color. She pushed her palm forward slowly. It seemed very slow, but it left a series of clear afterimages in the air. Chi-Yu's heart skipped a beat. However, he did not use his Kirin mirror to block it. Instead, he retracted his Kirin mirror and let out a low growl. His right fist, which was shrouded in red, black, and silver light, met the girl's palm with surging energy. Chi-Yu's low growl turned into a shout. Appear! Back when Chi-Yu was still at the Four-Cloud Realm, even the vampire Prince Klinsman could not block his Kirin arm. Now that his strength had increased to the Five-Cloud Realm and he had the stronger Fire Thundercloud force, the air instantly distorted when he punched. The distortion was not because the air was affected by the heat, but because it was compressed by the huge amount of energy. The girl's expression changed drastically as a light blossomed in her eyes. At that moment, Chi-Yu clearly saw a blue halo appear behind her. At the same time, her skin turned a greenish blue. The surrounding air seemed to solidify as the palm that was pushing forward suddenly sped up. Her palm, which was originally facing outwards, was now facing outwards with her fingertips. In a split second, her fingertips had already touched Chi-Yu's fist. A cold aura instantly enveloped Chi-Yu's body. More than 10 needle-like cold air burst forth. The moment the girl's palm touched Chi-Yu's right fist, when her ice energy burst forth, her palm actually moved back slightly by half an inch. Then, except for her thumb, the first joint of the other 4 fingers bent at the same time and hit Chi-Yu's fist again. This was not the end. When an even stronger ice energy burst forth, her palm completely clenched into a fist and hit Chi-Yu's fist for the 3rd time, which was shimmering with black, silver, and red light. The 3 consecutive strikes were completed almost in an instant. The original 1 layer of ice energy suddenly became 3 layers, and it actually produced a certain stacking effect. With a loud bang, Chi-Yu's body did not move, but the girl was sent flying by his fist. Although the young girl's reactions were extremely fast, and she had relied on the 3 one-inch strikes to raise her attack power to the limit and raise her ice ability to a rather terrifying level, it was a pity that she had encountered Chi-Yu. In a situation where she was at a complete disadvantage in terms of energy, no matter how good her attack was, it was useless. Not only did Chi-Yu have the Kirin arm of the Five Clouds realm, but he also had the huge fire energy of Wen-Ting as a backup. In terms of energy attributes, Wen-Ting's attributes completely countered the girl in front of her. If she were to fight with the girl, it would be difficult to say what would happen. However, it was different now. Relying on Chi-Yu's body, Wen-Ting's energy as a giant beast's living relic was equivalent to the girl's own energy completely fused together. How could the girl in front of her resist this kind of stacked living energy? Fresh blood sprayed out and landed on the white dress. The bright red on the white dress was very obvious. The young girl's body, which had lost the support of energy, drew a beautiful parabola in the air and fell to the ground. When she was hit by Chi-Yu's punch, the energy that burst out from Chi-Yu had completely sealed her meridians, and at the same time she was bombarded by the punch and fainted. Fortunately, Chi-Yu could not distinguish whether the girl was a friend or foe, so he did not completely send the fire energy into the girl's body. Otherwise, the girl who had 2 types of ice and wind energy would have been dead by now. Kirin of the Five Clouds was already standing at the peak of ordinary ability users. Chi-Yu watched the girl's body fall down. His figure flashed and appeared beside her. He grabbed her with his left hand and held her in the crook of his arm. The golden wings on his back flapped gently, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in the courtyard of the villa. It was strange to say that as soon as the girl fainted, the originally snowy sky suddenly became quiet. Even the dark clouds in the sky began to gradually disperse. Chi-Yu laid the girl flat on the side of the pool. His right shoulder shook slightly and a red light lit up. Wen-Ting had already been separated from his body. This time, due to the full preparation of the fusion, it only took about 2 minutes from the start of the attack to the end. Therefore, the consumption of Wenting's energy was not that great. She looked at the girl on the ground with some surprise and looked at Chiyu. The two of them said in unison, "Snow Girl." Yes. This had something to do with the weather. Other than the missing Snow Girl of the Yellow Flame Soul, who else could it be? Chiyu murmured, "It can't be so coincidental, Dad. We were just about to leave the capital, but we met the missing Snow Girl of the Yellow Flame Soul." Wenting said, "You said before that it had nothing to do with us. Fortunately, she appeared when we just started training. Otherwise, if we used up all our energy, it would be really difficult to deal with her. I carefully felt the strength of her energy just now. When she attacked you at the end, the temperature around us had already reached a shocking 120 degrees Celsius. Moreover, her ice energy is very condensed. Fortunately, she met us. I'm afraid that ordinary Zodiac Guardian warriors would have a hard time dealing with her without the strength of Wu Yun. Is the Yellow Flame Soul really so strong?" Chiyu shrugged and said, "The Yellow Flame Soul is after all the most secretive organization in the Yanhuang Republic. Some strong people are natural. However, I don't understand what Jida meant by going berserk. I think there must be some inside story. How about I call Jida now and ask him to come over and take a look?" Wenting thought for a while and said, "Forget it, let's get to the bottom of it first. I feel that this Snow Girl is not simple. You saw it for yourself just now. Her eyes looked very empty, as if she had some mental problem. Let's go back to the room first and wake her up to ask the reason." Chiyu nodded and was about to carry the Snow Girl, but Wenting beat him to it. Wenting rolled her eyes at him and said, "She's so beautiful, don't tell me you're thinking of something bad again." Chiyu felt wronged and said, "Even if my immunity to beauties is a little low, but am I that kind of beast?" Wenting laughed and said, "That's hard to say. You guys, not a single one of you is good." Chiyu touched Kirin-in, who was still behind him, and thought to himself, "Father-in-law, your precious daughter scolded you too. However, you can't blame me for this." Wenting was still wearing her swimsuit at this time. Because her energy was not at its peak, she managed to keep her swimsuit this time. She carried the Snow Girl directly back to Chiyu's room, but Chiyu was blocked outside. Chiyu had no choice but to go back to the room where he changed before returning to the door of his room to wait. A woman's speed of dressing was always slower than a man's. After all, there would always be one more piece of clothing. After waiting for a while, Wenting, who had finished changing, opened the door and let Chiyu in. Snow Girl was lying on Wenting's bed at this time. Chiyu looked at Wenting and said, "What do we do now?" Wenting said, "You sealed the energy in her body and held back in the last blow. She is only unconscious now. I'll wake her up first, and then we can ask her what's going on together. Anyway, she can't do anything without energy." Chiyu nodded and said, "Then only you can do it. I can't do anything." Wenting walked to the side of Snow Girl and sat down. Her hand lit up with a faint red light. She stretched out her index finger and touched the center of Snow Girl's eyebrows. Under the effect of energy, Snow Girl's body shook and gradually reacted. Chiyu only sealed her energy but did not seal her meridians. Therefore, although she lost the ability to use the wind and snow, she could still move. When Snow Girl slowly opened her eyes, Chiyu and Wenting were surprised to find that her eyes were blue. Moreover, it was different from the blue of Western people. It was a deep blue. It was a blue that was deeper than sapphire. There was not a trace of impurity in it. "What beautiful eyes!" Wenting couldn't help but exclaim. Snow Girl's big eyes moved. It was different from when she fought with Chiyu. Now, her eyes were more lively and not as empty as before. She looked at Wenting and her eyes suddenly revealed a strong fear. She screamed and jumped up from the bed. Hiding in the corner of the room, her delicate body trembled. Don't hurt me. I don't have pearls. I don't have pearls for you. Don't hurt me. I beg you, don't hurt me." Wenting was stunned and sighed. It seems that she really has a mental problem. She tentatively walked 2 meters away from Snow Girl and stopped. She said softly, "Little girl, don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. Tell me, what is your name? Why are you so afraid?" The Snow Lady ignored Wen Ting. Perhaps it was because Wen Ting was getting closer to her, but her body was trembling even more violently. She was still repeating the same words over and over again, and her body was trembling incessantly. It was an extremely adorable sight. Chi Yu said, "Let me try." As he said that, he walked to Wen Ting and squatted down. He said to Snow Girl, "Hello, you are Snow Girl, right? Don't be afraid. No one will hurt you here." In terms of voice, Chi Yu's voice was far less gentle than Wen Ting's. But for some reason, when Snow Girl heard his voice, she immediately reacted. Her trembling body stopped, and her dark blue eyes looked at Chi Yu. Her eyes suddenly became dull. Just when Chi Yu thought that he couldn't communicate with her, Snow Girl suddenly called out 2 words that made Chi Yu feel very awkward. "Daddy, you are Daddy. Daddy, Daddy, Snow Girl misses you so much." Before Chi Yu could react, Snow Girl had already jumped into Chi Yu's arms. Fortunately, Chi Yu's body was still very strong, so he didn't fall down. However, at this time, Chi Yu was completely stunned. "Daddy, Daddy, Snow Girl misses you so much. Daddy, don't leave Snow Girl again, okay? Daddy, I miss you so much." Snow Girl hugged Chi Yu tightly. Her height was similar to Wen Ting's. She jumped into Chi Yu's arms. Although her body was very cold, it was also very soft. Her soft skin pressed against Chi Yu's body, giving him an extremely comfortable feeling. Wen Ting looked at Chi Yu and Snow Girl dumbfounded. She thought in her heart, "Oh my God, this ruffian's attraction is too terrifying. Even a mentally ill girl will take the initiative to throw herself into his arms. Is Kieran's talent really so strong?" Wen Ting was surprised. Chi Yu, who was called Daddy, was even more surprised. He was only 19 years old this year, and he just had his first woman not long ago. How could he be the father of such a big girl? Even if Snow Girl was not as old as him, she was not much younger. Listening to Snow Girl's sincere call, Chi Yu's heart was full of embarrassment. In shock, he even forgot to push Snow Girl in his arms away. "Chi Yu, did you know her before?" Wen Ting's question awakened Chi Yu. He quickly shook his head and said, "Of course not. Snow Girl, calm down. I'm not your father. Just look carefully." Snow Girl slowly raised her head, but her arms were still around Chi Yu's neck. Her dark blue eyes carefully looked at Chi Yu, who was close at hand, and the light in her eyes flickered slightly. Just when Chi Yu thought that she had recognized him, Snow Girl shouted, "Daddy, you are Daddy. Why, Daddy, why don't you want Snow Girl?" Tears flowed down from the Snow Lady's eyes. Those sparkling and translucent tears were completely different from the temperature of her body. The boiling hot tears soaked Chi Yu's clothes. Such a beauty who was close to the perfect level was in pain in his arms. Chi Yu suddenly panicked and looked to Wen Ting for help. It was rare to see Chi Yu suffer a setback. Wen Ting smiled sweetly as she stood to the side, acting as if this matter had nothing to do with her. She was clearly telling Chi Yu that he had to settle his own matters. "Daddy, Daddy, don't leave Snow Girl. Snow Girl is so scared." Snow Girl whispered. Her hands around Chi Yu's neck became firmer. She had no intention of letting go. Chi Yu had an idea. He thought to himself, "Since her mind is not normal, I might as well make the best of it. Okay, how can Daddy not want Snow Girl? Our Snow Girl is so beautiful. Daddy can't wait to like you. Snow Girl, be good and tell Daddy what happened, okay?" When Chi Yu said this, not only was Wen Ting stunned, but he also felt his teeth ache. However, his words had a good effect on Snow Girl. Her trembling weakened a lot. She raised her head and looked at Chi Yu with tearful eyes. She said, "Daddy, you really won't want Snow Girl?" Chi Yu nodded and said, "Of course not, but Snow Girl has to tell Daddy first. What happened to make you so scared?" Hearing Chi Yu's question, Snow Girl's delicate body began to tremble again. Fire, such a big fire. It engulfed our family. Grandpa, Grandma, Mommy, brother were all burned to death. Daddy is not here. Snow Girl is so scared. Mommy used her body to protect Snow Girl. When Snow Girl woke up, everyone was dead. Only Snow Girl was left. Snow Girl is so scared. Daddy, Daddy, Snow Girl is so scared. Listening to Snow Girl's words, Chi-Yu's brain worked very fast. Although Snow Girl's mental state was not normal, it seemed that she had suffered a huge shock. What she said should be the source of her shock. Snow Girl had wind and ice abilities. If her family had the same ability, then it must be a super strong person who could completely destroy such a family. Holding Snow Girl with one hand and standing up, Chi-Yu tentatively asked, Snow Girl, can you tell me in detail? Who attacked your family? Oh no, our family? Snow Girl was stunned for a moment. She looked at Chi-Yu blankly. She seemed to be thinking about something. Suddenly, she held her head with both hands. Her face showed an extremely painful expression. I can't remember. I can't remember. Chi-Yu grabbed her cold little hand and asked, think about it carefully. Fire, a lot of fire, such a big fire. Dad, don't force me. My head hurts so much. Snow Girl struggled hard and threw herself on the bed. Her body trembled violently. Obviously, she had fallen into the abyss of pain again. Chi-Yu felt sorry for her. He went over and held Snow Girl's shoulder. He comforted her, it's okay. Snow Girl, don't think about it. Don't be afraid. Dad is here. Snow Girl turned around and threw herself into Chi-Yu's arms. She hugged his neck tightly and cried loudly. However, her body stopped trembling. It was like she was drowning and hugging a life-saving driftwood. She was unwilling to let go. Chi-Yu helplessly looked at Wen-Ting and said, this matter is a little serious. It seems that we really need to find Jida and ask him about it. Wen-Ting nodded and said, this little girl is really pitiful. However, you really want to be her father. Chi-Yu helplessly replied, as you can see, I have no other choice. This is the only way to calm her emotions. Her meridians have been shaken by my attack just now, so let her rest for a while. Once her emotions have stabilized, we'll interrogate her again. Snow Girl's crying gradually subsided. Under Chi-Yu's comfort, she closed her eyes. Her long eyelashes were covered with crystal tears. It didn't take long. Perhaps it was because she was too emotional and too tired, or because the battle with Chi-Yu consumed too much energy, she gradually fell asleep. Chi-Yu carefully placed the Snow Girl on the bed. He wanted to break free from her arms, but the Snow Girl hugged him tightly, as if she was afraid of losing him. Chi-Yu's struggle was a little bigger, and the Snow Girl's sleeping face suddenly showed a painful expression. He couldn't do anything for a while. With the help of Wen-Ting, he struggled free from the Snow Girl's embrace. However, in order to let the Snow Girl sleep peacefully, Chi-Yu could only hold her hand. Only then did the Snow Girl fall asleep peacefully. Chi-Yu whispered, the phone is in my pocket. Help me dial Jida's number. Now that he only had one hand and the Snow Girl was holding it, he could only ask Wen-Ting for help. Wen-Ting took out the phone from Chi-Yu's pocket and dialed Jida's number. Then, she put the phone to Chi-Yu's ear. Hello, Master? Jida's voice came from the other side. Chi-Yu asked, Jida, where are you now? Jida said, I'm outside. Master, if there's nothing special, I'll hang up first. We're busy looking for the Snow Girl. The whole capital is now under secret lockdown. Chi-Yu took a deep breath and said, Jida, if I'm not mistaken, the Snow Girl is with me now. Oh, she's with you. What? You're saying that the Snow Girl is with you? Master, are you sure you're not mistaken? Jida exclaimed. Chi-Yu looked at the sleeping Snow Girl on the bed and said, I shouldn't be mistaken. She has the ability to control ice and wind. She looks to be around 20 years old. She's a very beautiful girl. Chapter 108. Chi-Yu thought for a moment, then said, the Snow Lady's emotions are very unstable right now, and she has just fallen asleep. How about this, don't bring too many people with you. Bring someone who knows what's going on. When Ting and I are at the Dragon Vein Hot Spring, Villa number 023. You can find it easily. Okay, I will contact the headquarters immediately. Master, you must wait for us there. After hanging up the phone, Chi-Yu looked at the snow girl on the bed. Perhaps it was because the snow girl kept calling him daddy. Looking at her pale face, Chi-Yu couldn't help but feel a sense of closeness. When Ting sat down beside Chi-Yu and whispered, "How is it?" Chi-Yu said, "Jida and the others will be here soon. I think, after combining what Jida and the others know, there should be some clues. However, I think the snow girl doesn't seem to be interested in the yellow flame soul. I hope it's not the yellow flame soul that destroyed her home. Otherwise, I will be very disappointed." When Ting gently leaned on Chi-Yu's right shoulder and said, "It shouldn't be. After all, the yellow flame soul represents our Yenwang Republic. Chi-Yu, this little girl is so dependent on you. Do you think she will always follow you?" Chi-Yu was stunned and said, "She is a yellow flame soul. Why would she follow me?" When Ting snorted and said, "The reason why she peeked at us from the air today, I think it was mainly because of the energy aura we emitted when we were cultivating that attracted her. When we were fighting, I could clearly feel the hostility she emitted. Just now, she kept talking about fire. I think she has a hidden resistance to fire energy. Moreover, this snow girl doesn't seem to be human." Chi-Yu's heart skipped a beat. "Are you saying that she's like you, a ferocious beast or a divine beast?" When Ting shook her head and said, "No, if she's a descendant of an ancient giant beast, then her body must have the aura of an ancient giant beast. However, she doesn't. At the same time, her aura is different from a human's. You should have noticed that her body temperature is almost below zero. How can a human have such a body temperature? If my guess is correct, she might be a special life form. I can clearly feel it from the energy aura on her body." Chi-Yu's eyes revealed the light of contemplation. He said, "In this aspect you are more experienced than me. Then tell me, what kind of life form could she be?" When Ting said, "Just now I carefully felt the energy aura on her body. Her ice energy is very pure, so pure that it's almost terrifying. In terms of energy volume, she doesn't even have a third of my energy, let alone compared to you in the past. Not counting the energy of the giant beast's living relic, she doesn't even have a third of my energy. However, because her ice energy is too pure, although her energy is not strong, she can exert great power. At least she can fight to a draw with me. This shows that her life form has a very close relationship with ice. Chi-Yu, have you heard of the story of the mountain people catching ginseng?" Chi-Yu said, "You're saying that when those herb gatherers catch ginseng, they will first tie a red rope on it. The older the ginseng, the more spiritual it will be, and the more likely it will be alive and able to escape. Is that right?" When Ting nodded and said, "That's not a legend. It's completely true. When ancient giant beasts cultivate to a certain level, they will have the ability to take human form. Of course, this has a lot to do with our own race. However, ancient giant beasts aren't the only ones who have this ability. The emergence of any creature's intelligence is closely related to energy. This is also why the more ancient giant beasts cultivate, the more powerful they become. Therefore, other than ancient giant beasts, plants can also have intelligence. Just like the ginseng you just mentioned, as long as it's more than 1,000 years old and reaches the 9th grade, it will have a certain degree of intelligence and mobility. If a ginseng is more than 10,000 years old, then its intelligence can be comparable to that of a human. This is the legendary 10,000-year-old ginseng baby. Those who reach 10,000 years old will turn into a human baby, and after a similar growth process as a human, they can become similar to a real human. However, the energy of ginseng is only yang, so even if they become adults, they won't have too much power. Instead, they will become the target of all kinds of fierce beasts and divine beasts. Therefore, 10,000-year-old ginseng is almost impossible to appear. Only after reaching 10,000 years old can they hide their aura, and before that, their aura has long been exposed to those powerful creatures. Chiyu understood and said, "You want to tell me that the energy on Snow Girl's body is so pure because she might be a plant?" Wenting nodded her head and said, "It's very possible. Although I can't be sure now, from the terrifying degree of condensation of the ice energy on her body, this is the only possibility in my understanding." Chiyu thought for a moment and said, "If that's the case, then what kind of plant is she? According to the ginseng you mentioned just now, I'm afraid that she's more than 10,000 years old. However, her ability is not weak." Wenting said, "Yes. I'm also thinking about what kind of plant she is. When a plant can turn into a human, then she is no longer a plant. It can be said that she will have everything that a human has, and at the same time, she will have the special characteristics of a previous plant, being able to have two attributes, ice and wind. For a moment, I really can't think of what kind of plant she is. Of course, my judgment might be wrong. After all, our Yanhuang culture has a long history. If humans have a cultivation method that can condense their own energy, then it might not be impossible. If that's the case, then our Yanhuang Republic is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers." Chiyu felt the cold hand of Snow Girl and said, "No matter what the situation is, Snow Girl is a very mysterious girl. Her emotions are so unstable now, it's hard to imagine what kind of pain she has gone through." After Chiyu and Wenting briefly discussed the problem of Snow Girl, the two of them changed the topic to today's experience of the fusion process. They had gone through a total of 3 fusion processes, especially today's last fusion and the short battle with Snow Girl. It gave them a new understanding of the fusion process and the effects of the fusion ability. Through their exchange, they had gradually found a way to do it. The time of the exchange was not too long. Counting from the time of the phone call, about half an hour later, the roar of an engine could be heard from outside. Chiyu saw from the window that Jida's modified off-road vehicle was already parked outside the villa. He hurriedly gave Wenting a look, and Wenting understood and went downstairs to welcome Jida and the others. There were only 2 people who came with Jida. One was the Yanhuang Soul Heaven and Earth Xian Huang 4th Team's leader, Tianhun, who Chiyu was familiar with. Tianhuan's attire today was much more normal. His original exaggerated hairstyle was gone, and he was wearing a thick down jacket. His face was full of anxiety. Chiyu did not recognize the other person. It was a slender man, about the same height as Chiyu, but he was very thin. He stood there like a straight javelin, and his whole body emitted a cold aura. It was different from Snow Girl's cold aura. His cold aura was completely formed from a strong killing intent. To have such a strong killing intent, he was obviously an assassin in the Yanhuang Soul Heaven and Earth Divine Realm. Tianhun and the other 2 walked into the room. When they saw Snow Girl on the bed, Tianhun immediately let out a long breath and panted. "We finally found this little ancestor. It was really not easy. Fortunately, she did not cause any trouble." Jida's gaze fell on Chiyu's hand that was holding Snow Girl's hand. He frowned slightly, but Chiyu still caught it clearly. Chiyu said, "You guys take a seat first. I want to know what's going on now." This bedroom was very big. Even with 6 people on the bed, including Snow Girl, it did not feel crowded. Tianhun pulled a chair over and sat down first. He pointed to the slender man and said, "Chiyu, let me introduce you first. Chiyu, allow me to introduce you. This is the #1 expert of our Yellow Flame Soul, Shahun." Chiyu's eyes flashed, and he looked at Shahun. When their eyes met, the killing intent on Shahun's body had completely disappeared. A faint smile appeared on his face that looked very ordinary. He said, "Hello, winner of the Diamond Protection Medal." Chiyu nodded at him and said, "Hello, nice to meet you." Tianhuan's gaze fell on Snow Girl. He lowered his voice and said, "Chiyu, how did you find her? We tried our best but could not find any clues. It's all thanks to you this time. Chi-Yu said, I found her by coincidence. When Ting and I were cultivating. Suddenly, we felt someone watching us and discovered her existence. When we fought, we restrained her ability. But don't worry, we didn't hurt her. She's just asleep now. Tianhun said a little awkwardly, Chi-Yu, can you let go of her first? Chi-Yu smiled bitterly. You think I don't want to. But now I'm not holding her. She's holding me. You have to figure it out first. Tianhun and Sha-Hun looked surprised at the same time. Obviously, they did not believe Chi-Yu's words. Tianhun said, How can that be? Snow Girl is usually as cold as a statue. She rarely talks to anyone. Chi-Yu said, When she wakes up, you will naturally understand. But for now, shouldn't you tell me where Snow Girl came from? When I talked to her just now, she seemed to have lost her memory and was a little incoherent. Her mood swings were very violent. She must have suffered a strong shock. There was a trace of helplessness in Sha-Hun's eyes. He said, This time, it's all my fault. Snow Girl is usually very normal. She has been in the Yellow Flame Soul sect for a few years. Usually, she only carries out some extremely special tasks. However, Snow Girl has her own taboo. She can't see fire. Every time she sees fire, she will go berserk. It takes a long time for her to return to normal. When I was going to the toilet this morning, I went into the toilet with a cigarette in my mouth. You know, men have the habit of smoking when they go to the toilet. But just as I was about to enter the toilet, I suddenly bumped into Yuki-Anna, who never appears in the morning. She saw me smoking and then saw the light from the cigarette, but she was stunned. My reaction wasn't slow, but I still didn't manage to catch her. She ran out. After that, we started searching everywhere. We've been busy since the morning. Finally, we found her. We can rest assured now. Chi-Yu thought about it and said, Brother Tianhun, I think we are not outsiders. From a certain point of view, we are all contributing to the country. Don't you think so? Tianhun nodded and said, Of course, you are the recipient of the Diamond Guardian Medal. According to your position, your rank is higher than mine. Brother, if you have anything to say, just say it. He was experienced and could naturally tell that Chi-Yu had something to ask. Chi-Yu nodded and said, Well, I will say it directly. Today, I saw Snow Girl's mood swing so much. I think she must have experienced very unusual things in the past. Since she is also a member of the Yellow Flame Soul sect, do you know where she came from? Also, what was she like in the past? Would she be as crazy as she was today? When Tianhun heard Chi-Yu's question, he exchanged a look with Sha-Hun beside him. After hesitating for a while, he said, Well, since we are not outsiders, there is no harm in telling you. Snow Girl's identity is top secret in the Yellow Flame Soul sect. Her code name is Snow Soul. In the Yellow Flame Soul sect, we, the Heaven, Earth, Mystic, and Yellow groups, are only responsible for carrying out ordinary tasks. Above us, there is another group, which is the Inner Spirit Society of the Yellow Flame Soul sect. There are not many members in the Inner Spirit Society, but they are all the most powerful combat ability users. Only when there is a great danger, like the crisis with the vampires, will they be mobilized. Sha-Hun is one of them, and so is Snow Soul. The identities of the 8 members of the Inner Spirit Society are very secretive. They are classified as national secrets, and their origins are also different. The leaders of our 4 groups are also the core of the Yellow Flame Soul sect. As far as I know, Snow Girl appeared more than 3 years ago. When she first appeared, she was just wandering alone on the road. I don't know if you remember the snowstorm 3 years ago. Originally, according to the weather forecast, there would be no snow at all, but snow appeared without warning. Chi-Yu said, Was she the one who did it? You had your eyes on her at that time? Tianhun nodded and said, Yes, our Yellow Flame Soul sect is a special department that deals with unusual situations. When we encounter such a situation, we naturally have to investigate carefully. We discovered her existence through the energy fluctuations on her body. The ice energy on her body is too pure, and it can easily affect the weather. After secretly observing her for a period of time, we discovered that she did not have any intention of causing destruction. She just likes the ice and snow environment very much. Hence, we began to try to get in touch with her. Snow Girl was surprisingly straightforward. When she found out our goal, she did not hesitate to choose to join the Yellow Flame Soul sect. From then on, our Yellow Flame Soul sect gained a mysterious Snow Soul. In these 3 years, Snow Soul only went on a total of 3 missions. Each time, she was assisted by other members of the Yellow Flame Soul sect. With her super strong ice energy, she easily completed the mission. Chi-Yu said with some disappointment, "Is that all you know? Then has she gone berserk before?" Tianhun smiled bitterly and said, "Of course she has. We do not know much about the Snow Girl. When she first joined the Yellow Flame Soul sect, we did not know about her taboo. One time, she went berserk and injured more than 10 of our members. Just like today, her emotions are extremely unstable. Fortunately, there are many strong people in the Yellow Flame Soul sect, and with the help of the Spirit Master, we were able to subdue her. Later, when she returned to normal, we gradually found out that she is very afraid of fire. Hence, we could only arrange for her to stay in an ice cellar. Usually, the Snow Girl rarely appears outside. Today, for some reason, she suddenly left the ice cellar and came to the headquarters. That is why she went berserk. We also asked her about her background, but she refused to tell us. In the Yellow Flame Soul sect, other than the plant souls who cannot speak, she is probably the least talkative. She is almost unwilling to interact with anyone, and only the Spirit Master can occasionally speak to her. Oh right, the Spirit Master is the highest leader of the Yellow Flame Soul sect. If there is a chance, I will introduce him to you. He's also a diamond medal recipient. Hearing the words diamond medal recipient, Chi-Yu couldn't help but think of the last stage of his training in the Taklamakan Desert. That person's appearance appeared in his mind. Could this soul overlord be him? His strength was unfathomable. Even now, when he could use the power of 5 clouds, Chi-Yu wasn't sure that he could defeat that person. Since the situation is like this, isn't Snow Girl a ticking time bomb? What are you going to do now? Bring her back? Chi-Yu asked. Tianhun thought for a moment and said, "No matter what, Snow Soul is our partner. We won't force her to do anything. Let's talk about it when she wakes up. Maybe after she sleeps, her emotions will calm down. As long as she returns to her normal state, everything will be much easier to deal with." Chi-Yu nodded and said, "That's the only way. Ting-Ting, get everyone some water to drink. Wicked disciple, please light a cigarette for Master. I really can't free my hands now." Jida helplessly took out his cigarette from his pocket, walked in front of Chi-Yu and stuffed it into his mouth. Before Jida could light the cigarette for Chi-Yu, there was a sudden flash of light. Chi-Yu didn't even have time to react before the cigarette in his mouth disappeared. Sha-Hun said with lingering fear, "Are you crazy? What if Snow Girl wakes up now? Do you want to see her go berserk?" Chi-Yu just remembered that Snow Girl couldn't be exposed to fire. He shook his head helplessly and said, "You'd better take her away quickly. I've been smoking less these days, and I'm trying to make up for it." At this moment there was a slight moan. The cold cigarette in Chi-Yu's hand moved slightly. Tianhun and Sha-Hun suddenly became nervous and surrounded the bed with Jida. Snow Girl on the bed slowly opened her eyes. The excitement in her eyes had disappeared, but there was a bit of confusion. She held Chi-Yu's hand tightly, as if she didn't see anyone else. She smiled sweetly at Chi-Yu and said, "Dad." Fortunately, Tianhun and the other 2 had been specially trained, but even so, they were still shocked by Snow Girl's sudden call of Dad. Their gazes were filled with shock as they looked at Chi-Yu. The complexity of their emotions was difficult to describe with words. Chi-Yu said helplessly, "You see, she's like a little girl now, pestering me." "Dad, are you talking about Snow Girl?" "Snow Girl is a little girl. Dad, holding your hand, Snow Girl sleeps very comfortably. Sitting up, Snow Girl leaned into Chi-Yu's arms. Her thoughts seemed to have automatically filtered out the others around her, and there was only Chi-Yu in her eyes. Tianhun didn't expect things to develop like this. He held back his laughter and said, Chi-Yu, what's going on? Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, after we restrained her, she shouted a lot of fire and her emotions were very unstable. Later, when I tried to ask her who she was, she suddenly called me Dad, as if she was very attached to me. It's giving me a headache now. Has this never happened to her before? Tianhun and Shahun shook their heads at the same time, and Shahun murmured, Oh my God! I can actually see Snow Girl smiling. This is like an iron tree blooming. You can actually melt this kind of 10,000-year-old iceberg? Brother Chi-Yu, I really admire you from the bottom of my heart. Did you know that the first time the Snow Lady went berserk, it was also because she saw the flame on my lighter? At that time, she suddenly attacked me with all her might, almost freezing my little brother. It was the first time I saw her so gentle. Chi-Yu burst out laughing because he saw Shah-Hun subconsciously covering his lower body. Obviously, that experience had given him a lot of stimulation. What do we do now? Can you take her back now? Tianhuan's eyes flashed and said, Well, I'd better ask for the opinion of the higher-ups first. After all, Snow Girl's reaction is too incredible. As he spoke, he quickly walked out of the room. He used a special method to contact the headquarters of the Yellow Flame Soul Sect. Shah-Hun approached Snow Girl in disbelief and asked tentatively, Snow Girl, do you know who I am? Snow Girl leaned on Chi-Yu's chest and looked at Shah-Hun curiously. Who are you? Shah-Hun said something that almost made Chi-Yu and Jida vomit. Me. I'm the most handsome man in the world. Snow Girl's answer was wonderful. Handsome? Could it be that looking like a bamboo pole was considered handsome? Fortunately, Daddy is not handsome. After hearing Snow Girl's words, everyone, including Wen-Ting, could not help but laugh. Even Snow Girl revealed a sweet smile on her face. She raised her head and looked at Chi-Yu innocently. Daddy, is Snow Girl right? Chi-Yu smiled and said, Yes, that's right. But this uncle was joking with you just now. In fact, the word handsome is used to describe a man who is very handsome. Snow Girl suddenly said, So that's how it is. Then Daddy must be the most handsome man in the world. After hearing Snow Girl's words, Chi-Yu's smile could not help but become a little more lascivious. He said shamelessly, Of course. Wait a minute, Brothers Chi, why did you introduce me to Snow Girl just now? Why did you say I'm an uncle? Am I that old? You know, I'm only 31 years old this year. Shah-Hun said with some dissatisfaction. Chi-Yu shrugged his shoulders and said, You and I are brothers. Snow Girl calls me Daddy. What else should I call you if not Uncle? Oh, you're older than me. You should call me Uncle. Shah-Hun was depressed. He almost vomited blood and died. Forget it, let's not discuss this issue. Snow Lady, take a closer look at me. Do you really not recognize me? This time, he leaned forward a little more. Snow Girl looked at him blankly. She shook her head and said, I've never seen you before. Uncle Bamboo Pole. Puff, Sky-Hun, who was approaching from outside, could not help but spit out the mineral water he had just drunk. It sprayed all over Jida, who was standing near the door. Jida smiled bitterly and said, Brother Sky-Hun, what are you doing? I don't want to take a bath. Sky-Hun looked at Shah-Hun. His eyes were dull for a moment. Then, he burst into laughter and imitated Snow Girl's tone and said, Uncle Bamboo Pole, Uncle Bamboo Pole. Shah-Hun's eyes suddenly froze. He stared fiercely at Sky-Hun and said, Do you want to die? Sky-Hun laughed and said, I'm afraid of you. Lick me if you have the ability. Damn, let's talk about it when we go back. I think your body condition is not very good recently. You should strengthen your combat training. Ah. Forget it, I won't call you Uncle Bamboo Pole. At most, I won't tell others that Snow Soul calls you Uncle Bamboo Pole. Hearing Sky Hun say it twice in a row, Sha Hun was on the verge of going berserk. At this time, Chi Yu came out to mediate. Alright, brother Sky Hun, tell me how the headquarters is going to handle this. Sky Hun said a little awkwardly, I have just discussed it carefully with the headquarters. Because Snow Girl's situation is very special, the headquarters thought it would be better for her to stay by your side for the time being. You can see that she is very reluctant to leave you. We can't take her away at all. So, let her stay for now. When her mind returns to normal and she remembers that she is a part of Yen Huang Hun, you can send her back. What do you think? Chi Yu was stunned for a moment, but he quickly understood what Yen Huang Hun meant. He frowned and said, You seem to be throwing away your burden. Sky Hun laughed bitterly. Brother, I won't hide it from you. Because Snow Soul is afraid of fire, we don't dare to let her go on missions anymore, for fear of danger. After all, she is one of us, and we have to consider her safety. Snow Soul is too strong, and every time she goes berserk, it will bring us a lot of trouble. We are not throwing this burden to you. We just feel that she will be safer with you. Look, she is so close to you, and you have the ability to restrain her. Under such circumstances, perhaps you can help her break free from her previous nightmare. Although I don't know what that nightmare is, I think it would be a good choice for Snow Soul to follow you. Chi Yu looked at Wen Ting. Wen Ting said, But we won't be staying too long in the capital. Moreover, when Chi Yu and I leave this time, we may face many dangers, and it will not be convenient to bring Snow Girl along. Moreover, you should know that Chi Yu has lost his own ability, and Snow Girl is not weak. If she is in danger, I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to deal with her. Her emotions have stabilized, and I think it is better for you to bring Yen Huang Hun back. Snow Soul's emotions were not normal, but it did not mean that she could not understand what they were saying. Her beautiful deep blue eyes were glistening with tears, and she gently shook Chi Yu's hand. Daddy, don't you want Snow Girl anymore? Ah! Chi Yu looked at Snow Girl, and he really could not bear to say anything that would hurt her. At that moment, he struggled in his heart, and looked at Wen Ting with a pleading look. Wen Ting sighed softly and said, You decide. However, if we bring her along, we will have to be even more careful in our actions. Chi Yu nodded and said, Forget it, it is fate that we met Snow Girl. In that case, Big Brother Tianhun, let Snow Girl stay with us for now. When she has fully recovered, I will send her back. Tianhun was overjoyed and quickly said, Brother, then I will thank you on behalf of Yen Huang Hun. If you need our help in the future, don't hesitate to ask. Chi Yu said unhappily, Well, I don't need your help, but I still need to trouble you to take care of the Dragonfield courtyard. They are all my best friends. Jida said, Master, you don't have to say this. We will do it. We have files on all the Zodiac Guardian God Warriors that have appeared. Even those 2 from the Sacred Flame sect have been approved by the higher-up. We will ensure their safety first no matter what. What happened in Yunnan last time was a wake-up call for us, and now we have made arrangements around the Dragonfield courtyard. Tianhun seemed to be eager to leave and said, In that case, we will leave first. Brother Chi, if you need anything, just look for Jida. As long as you are still in the country, we will be able to provide you with help. As soon as I finished speaking, I immediately left the villa with Sha Hun. Jida said a little helplessly, Master, although I don't know what the Snow Lady has done in the Yen Huang Soul world in the past, looking at Big Brother Tianhun and the others, this Snow Soul is really a ticking time bomb. You have to be careful, especially not to steal what you're guarding. Chapter 109. Tisk. Wen Ting and Jida gave Chi Yu a disdainful gesture at the same time. Only then did Jida walk out of the room to chase after Heaven and Sha Hun. Watching the off-road vehicle leave the window, Chi Yu smiled bitterly. It doesn't matter if they come or not. We still haven't figured out what's going on with Snow Girl. Ting smiled gently and walked to Chi Yu's side. She looked at Shuang and said, I didn't expect your heart to be so soft. However, this little girl is really lovable. Chi Yu, can you not use the word little girl to describe her? Looking at her, she doesn't seem to be younger than me. Ting giggled and said, Then I'll call you little brother. After saying that, she realized the flaw in her words and her pretty face couldn't help but become even redder. Snow Girl said, Daddy, who is this auntie? Chi Yu's face showed a trace of a naughty smile and said, You can call her Mommy in the future. Snow Girl's eyes showed a trace of a blank look. Mommy, Mommy. Ting obviously didn't have a thick face like Chi Yu. Her face suddenly became red and she punched Chi Yu's shoulder hard. What nonsense are you talking about? Don't teach the child bad things. Although she looks like an adult now, her mind is like a piece of white paper. Chi Yu gently stroked Snow Girl's soft long hair and said, Now I don't know what will happen to her mood and spirit. If she will always be like this, it doesn't seem bad. With such a big daughter, I also have a sense of accomplishment. Ting snorted and said, Don't have bad intentions. Chi Yu said seriously, Ting, am I that perverted? Although I admit that I like beautiful women, it's not to that extent. Snow Girl calls me Daddy. Seeing the unsightly expression on Chi Yu's face, Ting apologized, I'm sorry. I didn't do it on purpose. It's just that you have too many convictions. Chi Yu lowered his head and looked at Snow Girl. He shook his head and said, However, I'm not related to Snow Girl by blood. It's hard to say what will happen in the future. Ting grabbed Chi Yu's ear and said, I knew you were pretending. Chi Yu chuckled and said, Then why are you apologizing to me? It seems that my acting skills are not bad. Mommy, don't grab Daddy. Daddy will hurt. Snow Girl held Ting's hand worriedly. Hearing the word Mommy again, Ting couldn't help but think of her own mother. Her eyes turned slightly red. She let go of her hand and pulled Snow Girl away from Chi Yu into her arms. She said softly, Snow Girl, we will take good care of you in the future. Forget all the unhappy things in the past. Snow Girl looked at Ting in confusion. However, she felt the motherly aura from Ting. She leaned on Ting's shoulder with peace of mind. Mommy, Snow Girl will be very obedient. Chi Yu said, Ting, I am hesitating now. Should I remove the restriction on Snow Girl? Ting furrowed her brows and said, Let's not undo it for now. Her emotions aren't stable yet. If she goes berserk, I'm afraid you'll be in danger. Let's observe her for a few days. Oh right. From now on, no fireworks. You're not allowed to smoke anymore. Do you hear me? Don't, Chi Yu screamed. For an old smoker who had smoked for 10 years, not allowing him to smoke was definitely a very painful thing. At most, I can go out and smoke, Chi Yu said tentatively. Ting shook her head firmly and said, You can't go out and smoke. We have to avoid any possibility of stimulating Snow Girl. Since you have chosen to let her stay, then we have to be responsible for her. Moreover, smoking is a bad habit. This time, I can help you quit. Chi Yu looked at Snow Girl's big clear eyes and sighed. Okay, I will endure it first. It was getting late. In order not to let Snow Girl see the flames, Ting specially went to the restaurant outside to buy some food. Compared with Chi Yu and Ting, Snow Girl's appetite was pitiful. She only ate some vegetables and simple staple food. Originally, the task of going out to buy food should be Chi Yu, but Snow Girl didn't want to be separated from Chi Yu no matter what. And Chi Yu was also afraid that she would meet people who smoked if he took her out, so only Ting went. While Ting brought back food, she also brought back clothes for Snow Girl. After all, wearing thin clothes in this cold weather was not good for Snow Girl, but it would not be good if outsiders saw it. Dad, can I not wear these? Snow Girl asked carefully. Chi Yu said, Snow Girl, be good. Put them on first. Aren't you cold at all? Snow Girl shook her head and said, I'm not cold. I've never felt cold before. Chi Yu said, be good. You are wearing so little now. Although you are not cold, Dad will feel sorry for you. Come on, go to the next room and change your clothes. Dad and Mom are waiting for you here. Snow Girl looked at Chi-Yu's determined eyes and nodded helplessly. She picked up the bag of clothes and went to the next room. Snow Girl went to the next room. Wen-Ting lowered her voice and said to Chi-Yu fiercely, "Can you ask her not to call me Mom? It sounds weird." Chi-Yu smiled and said, "Don't you think this feeling is very warm now? Even though we're not her real parents, we're more like a family now that she's here. You and I are both orphans, and we've both experienced the pain of not having parents. I'm guessing that the Snow Lady is probably an orphan now as well. Why should we let her suffer the pain that we've gone through? Let's be her parents first. Perhaps in a warm environment it will be easier for her to recover." After listening to Chi-Yu's words, Wen-Ting's eyes gradually became gentle. She nodded gently and said, "Well, I hope she can recover soon. Dad, how do I wear this?" At this time, Snow Girl suddenly ran in from outside with something in her hand. When Chi-Yu saw the thing in her hand, he couldn't help but open his mouth wide. He didn't even notice that the steamed bun in his mouth had fallen out. Wen-Ting's face turned red. She quickly got up and pulled Snow Girl over. She whispered, "Let's go, Mom will help you wear it." In Snow Girl's hand was a light pink bra with lace edges. Watching the two women leave, Chi-Yu subconsciously touched his nose. In his mind, he couldn't help but think of Snow Girl's full breasts. Slap! Chi-Yu slapped his own face and said to himself, "Chi-Yu, what are you thinking? She is now your daughter. Yes, your daughter. Don't get it wrong." After a simple dinner, Chi-Yu originally planned to let Snow Girl and Wen-Ting sleep in the same room. After all, with the addition of Snow Girl, he would be embarrassed to pester Wen-Ting. As long as the distance wasn't too far, their energy aura could still be connected. However, Snow Girl refused to leave Chi-Yu. Her attachment to Chi-Yu had reached an extremely strong level. In order to supervise someone and prevent him from stealing, Wen-Ting finally decided that the three of them would sleep in the same room. She and Snow Girl would sleep on the bed, while Chi-Yu would sleep under the bed. As for the problem of cultivation, they could only think about it tomorrow. Snow Girl seemed to be very sleepy. Just after 7 o'clock in the evening, she curled up on the bed and fell asleep. Her long eyelashes were slightly trembling even when she was asleep, and her mouth whispered, "Daddy," from time to time. She changed into normal clothes, clean blue jeans and a blue turtleneck sweater. There was a yellow lion pattern on the chest area of the sweater, which looked very cute. Chi-Yu looked at Wen-Ting, and Wen-Ting also looked at him. "What should I do now? My energy is of the fire attribute. How can I cultivate next to Snow Girl?" Chi-Yu thought for a moment and said, "We still have to continue cultivating. After all, this is the purpose of our trip. How about this, when we cultivate, you wear Kirin invisibility. After all, Uncle created Kirin invisibility, so you should be able to use it. With Kirin invisibility to cover your energy, I think Snow Girl shouldn't be able to find out. It doesn't matter to me. Anyway, I don't have Thundercloud Force now, so I can't manifest the fire ability at all." Wen-Ting nodded and said, "That's the only thing we can do now. Then let's start." The cultivation in the hot spring this afternoon was not fully completed. Although Chi-Yu didn't show it on the surface, in fact, he really wanted to restore his strength as soon as possible. Under the stimulation of Wen-Ting's energy, he took out Kirin invisibility from the Kirin bead and gave it to her. Then, he sat cross-legged on the quilt on the ground and began to cultivate. During the process of cultivation, time always passed very quickly. Chi-Yu still divided his mind into two parts. On one side, he normally cultivated the ascending Qilin technique, and on the other side, he carefully comprehended the spiritual imprint left by Wen-Ting's father. While cultivating, Chi-Yu discovered that although his physical condition had basically returned to normal with the help of the Guardian God warriors, he still couldn't gather a trace of Thundercloud Force in his body when cultivating. Therefore, the speed of cultivation was no different from the previous interrogation. It was still as difficult as before. However, this difficulty didn't weaken his will to cultivate. While cultivating, he was gradually attracted by the spiritual imprint left by Wen-Ting's father, the genius of the Kirin clan. Apart from the fusion technique, Qi Yu was very interested in the Thousand Transformation Jade Pearl Realm technique. It wasn't something that could be fully understood in a day or two. The night gradually darkened. Wen-Ting and Qi Yu were quietly cultivating. Wen-Ting had Kirin invisibility draped over her body. Just as Qi Yu said, Kirin invisibility didn't reject her at all and completely covered up the energy emitted from her body. On the other hand, there was no energy emitted from Qi Yu's body. The entire room became very quiet. Snow Girl, who had been lying on the bed and curled up in a deep sleep, suddenly moved. Her originally curled-up body gradually stretched out and emitted a faint cold aura. Her long eyelashes first moved slightly, then her eyes slowly opened. Even in the darkness of the night, her sapphire-like eyes still emitted a dazzling brilliance. She looked around blankly. Because Wen-Ting had Kirin invisibility draped over her body and it was dark, Snow Girl, who was sitting cross-legged at the head of the bed, did not attract the attention of Snow Girl. Snow Girl's gaze directly fell on Qi Yu, who was lying on the ground. At this moment, although Snow Girl's appearance had not changed at all and her body was still normal, her gaze had changed. The childlike innocence before she slept had completely disappeared. Her deep and cold eyes emitted a faint cold light. She subconsciously looked at her palms and a trace of contemplation appeared in her eyes. When she looked at Qi Yu, her gaze gradually rose with a trace of killing intent. Die! Snow Girl suddenly shouted and fiercely pushed her palm towards Qi Yu. Unfortunately, there was no cold current that she had imagined. Her palm only brought a faint breeze. However, this shout of Snow Girl gave Qi Yu and Wen-Ting a shock. Both of them were afraid that something would happen to Snow Girl before practicing, so they deliberately reserved a part of their spirit to sense what was happening outside their body. When they suddenly heard Snow Girl's voice, they immediately stopped practicing. Qi Yu did not have thundercloud force, so it was very easy for him to stop. He was the first to open his eyes. Snow Girl looked at her palms in a daze, and then looked at Qi Yu, who had opened his eyes. She shouted angrily and suddenly pounced on Qi Yu from the bed. Snow Girl, what are you doing? Qi Yu was shocked and quickly reached out to embrace the Snow Girl who was pouncing on him, lest he hurt his daughter. However, Snow Girl did not have the slightest intention to be polite. She used both her hands and mouth at once and launched a somewhat crazy attack on Qi Yu. The current her was simply like a different person from the gentle and pitiful little girl before. She was crazy like a little wildcat. At this time, Wen-Ting had also completed a cycle of cultivation. She opened her eyes and saw that Snow Girl was pounding on Qi Yu. She quickly reached out and grabbed Snow Girl's arm, using the energy in her body to seal her ability to move. Qi Yu was a little dazed by Snow Girl's beating. Looking at the cold and murderous eyes of the schoolgirl, he asked doubtfully, "Snow Girl, what's wrong with you? I'm your father." "Whose father are you?" Snow Girl's voice seemed to come from the depths of hell. Listening to it, the chill seemed to come from the bones. Qi Yu was stunned, Wen-Ting was also stunned. The two looked at Snow Girl, and did not know what to do for a moment. Wen-Ting asked tentatively, "Snow Girl, don't you recognize us?" Snow Girl snorted coldly and said, "Who are you? Why did you capture me and bring me here? I'm going to kill you." "It's over, Ting-Ting." It seems like she has returned to her normal personality, Qi Yu said helplessly. He did not know why, but looking at Snow Girl who had returned to her normal self, he actually felt a little disappointed. Wen-Ting nodded and said to Snow Girl, "Snow Girl, do you know anyone from the Yellow Flame Soul?" Snow Girl was stunned and said, "How do you know that I'm from the Yellow Flame Soul?" Qi Yu said, "Of course we know. Think carefully what happened today." Snow Girl hesitated for a moment and her eyes revealed the light of contemplation. she said to herself. In the morning, I seem to have seen the most annoying thing, and then I don't know anything else. Could it be that today Chi-Yu said with certainty, yes, you went berserk again today. It was us who saved you. We originally wanted to send you back to the Yellow Flame Soul, but you kept pulling me to call you Daddy. When the people from the Yellow Flame Soul came, they saw that you were so attached to me, so they decided to temporarily leave you here. You're talking nonsense. Snow Girl glared at Chi-Yu. How could I call you Daddy? Chi-Yu said helplessly, I'm just saying the truth. Snow Girl, now that you're awake, can you tell me what happened to you? Maybe we can help you. A painful light flashed in Snow Girl's eyes. She glared at Chi-Yu and said, I don't want to listen to your lies. Let me go immediately. No one needs to care about my matters. Chi-Yu now understood why Sha Hun said that Snow Girl's smile was like a blooming iron tree. Her current look, even when Hai Ryue was angry, could not be compared. That coldness that came from the bones, almost anyone who saw her would want to stay away. However, the Snow Girl at this time had a different kind of coldness. When Ting said, Miss Snow Girl, can you calm down first? I can prove that what Chi-Yu said is true. Today, after you left Yen Huang Soul's headquarters, you changed the weather. After that, you were discovered by us when we were cultivating. You even fought with us for a while. After that, it was Chi-Yu who sealed your body's meridians. Then, after you calmed down a little, you started to call Chi-Yu Daddy. That's the truth. Think about it carefully, maybe you have some memories? After hearing Wen Ting's words, not only did Snow Girl not think about it, her eyes became even colder. In her cold eyes there was a strong chill. I said, let me go. These few simple words made Chi-Yu have goosebumps. Even the temperature in the room seemed to have dropped a lot. Chi-Yu looked at Wen Ting and said, what do we do now? Why don't we call Tian Hun and the others over, and let them take Snow Girl back? Wen Ting hesitated for a while and said, it's already late at night. Even if we send her back, we have to wait until tomorrow morning. Snow Girl looked at the two of them coldly. The chill on her body seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. Chi-Yu suddenly had an idea and said, I have an idea. Wen Ting said in surprise, what idea? Chi-Yu said, according to what we saw today, after Snow Girl saw the fire, she will go berserk. In fact, when she goes berserk, she will be very afraid, and she will become the Snow Girl who calls me Daddy. Since she is full of hostility towards us now, why don't we try to make her go berserk again? Perhaps we can find the cause of her condition. Anyway, we have sealed her energy, so there shouldn't be any problems. Wen Ting hesitated for a while and said, all right, let's try. Chi-Yu took out his lighter from his pocket and said to Snow Girl with a bitter smile, Miss Snow Girl, don't misunderstand. We really want to help you. I can also imagine what tragic things have happened to you. It seems that you won't trust us, so we can only let you become another Snow Girl first. Tomorrow morning, I will send you back to Yen Huang Soul. Pa with a sound, Chi-Yu lit up the light in his hand. His gaze suddenly froze as he looked at the slightly swallowing flame. He murmured, fire, it's fire, no, it's fire. No, it's such a big fire. Her gaze gradually became blurred, and her body began to tremble violently. However, under Wen Ting's control, she could not move now. Chi-Yu extinguished the lighter, turned on the light in the room, and looked carefully at Snow Girl. Snow Girl's body was trembling violently. It seemed that she had returned to the state when she was first captured by Chi-Yu and Wen Ting. Chi-Yu said tentatively, Snow Girl, don't be afraid. Daddy is here. Daddy will protect you. Hearing Chi-Yu's voice, Snow Girl's empty eyes regained some spirit. She looked at Chi-Yu and said, Daddy, Snow Girl is so scared. Hug me. Wen Ting breathed a sigh of relief. Both she and Chi-Yu knew that Chi-Yu's judgment was correct. They loosened the control of Snow Girl and let her jump into Chi-Yu's arms. Chi-Yu comforted Snow Girl, and he felt a little satisfied. He still liked the current Snow Girl. Although her body was also very cold, the current Snow Girl made him feel very close. When Ting said, "It seems that Snow Girl's situation is not good. From a medical point of view, she should have schizophrenia. Under the stimulation of the flames, her mind would immediately undergo a transformation. She should have become the Snow Girl of her childhood, and it was during her childhood that she had experienced such a strong stimulation. When her mood calms down, the shadow of her childhood will gradually disappear, and she will become the cold Snow Girl again." "Chi-Yu, you are looking for big trouble for yourself." Chi-Yu said helplessly, "What can I do now?" When Ting said, "Snow Girl has become our daughter again. Do you have the heart to send her back now? That cold girl seems to have sealed her heart in ice. If she goes back, she will be like that forever." Snow Girl looked up at Chi-Yu blankly and said, "Daddy, what's wrong with Snow Girl?" "Snow Girl is fine. You just had a nightmare. Come, sleep quickly. With Daddy by your side, no one will hurt our Snow Girl." Chi-Yu comforted Snow Girl and carried her to the bed with one arm. Snow Girl looked at Chi-Yu and nodded obediently. She closed her eyes and fell asleep again. Feeling that Snow Girl had fallen asleep, Chi-Yu said to Wen Ting, "Fortunately, we didn't remove the restriction on her energy. Otherwise, there would be big trouble just now. No wonder they said that Snow Girl is a time bomb. I can't bear to see her suffer. However, in this kind of situation, if we let Snow Girl stay by our side, we really can't deal with it." Wen Ting's eyes suddenly lit up and said, "It's not that there is no way. If I'm not wrong, the previous Snow Girl should be in that cold state most of the time. Only when she occasionally sees fire would she become this Snow Girl that is full of fear. If we let her stay in this state, perhaps, after a long time, her two split personalities can merge back into one. Moreover, the current state of Snow Girl is no threat." Chi-Yu's heart moved and said, "What you mean is that from now on, we don't need to avoid fire in front of her. Instead, we need to let her see fire often in order to maintain her current personality, right?" Wen Ting smiled and said, "That's right. If that's the case, we don't need to worry about anything. She is very trusting of you now. Tomorrow morning, when she wakes up, you start to instill the idea that fire is not scary. Although it might not be easy to accept at first, it should be fine after a long time. When Snow Girl's condition stabilizes, we can also return her ability to her. At that time, we will leave here." After a total of 5 days, under Chi-Yu and Wen Ting's careful experiments, the Snow Girl's personality finally stabilized. In the beginning, the Snow Girl who called Chi-Yu Daddy was still very repulsed by fire. However, for some reason, she had a strong trust in Chi-Yu. Under Chi-Yu's continuous guidance, she had gradually understood that the current fire was not the terrifying fire in her memory, and was gradually able to adapt. In the 5 days, the ice-cold Snow Girl appeared a total of 7 times. Chi-Yu originally wanted to test and change her, but it turned out that the iceberg was not that easy to melt. After a few tests, the iceberg Snow Girl's hatred towards Chi-Yu seemed to be increasing. Therefore, whenever she appeared, Chi-Yu would immediately light a lighter and summon his cute baby daughter. At night, when he went to bed, he would directly light a large candle on the table to burn for an entire night. This way, he was not afraid that the Snow Girl would change in the middle of the night. Took them 3 days to complete all this. After another 2 days of experiments and confirming that there were no problems, the 3 finally left the Dragon Vein hot spring. Although they only stayed here for 5 days, and most of the time was spent on the Snow Girl, Chi-Yu and Wen Ting did not stop practicing. Their fusion skill was getting more and more perfect under continuous experiment. However, they controlled the time of fusion to about 40 minutes every day, leaving 20 minutes to adapt. "Ting Ting, where are we going now?" Chi-Yu held the steering wheel with his left hand and felt the solid aerodynamic chassis of the Q7 and asked Wen Ting. Wen Ting and the Snow Girl sat in the back and said, "It's up to you. The capital is in the north, so you can drive to the south. I will try my best to feel the energy aura of the places we pass by. I'm afraid we can only rely on luck to find the ferocious beast. Chi-Yu thought for a moment and said, ferocious beasts are generally more likely to appear in the deep mountains and swamps, so we might as well take the national highway and find a bad road. How about this, we will first drive in the direction of Chengdu, and then take the Sichuan-Tibet line to Tibet. I have long heard that the scenery of the Sichuan-Tibet line is the most beautiful, and this time I can take a look. The Snow Girl asked curiously, Daddy, Mommy, what are you looking for? Chi-Yu smiled and said, Daddy and Mommy are going to look for some dangerous beasts. Are you afraid? The Snow Girl stuck out her full chest and said, I'm not afraid. As long as Daddy is here, Snow Girl is not afraid of anything. After 5 days of getting along, she felt more intimate with Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu and Wen-Ting also gradually adapted to the feeling of having a daughter. The family sat in the car, and the warm atmosphere was what they wanted the most. However, Wen-Ting and Snow Girl sat in the back, and Chi-Yu's big bed could only be put away. The beast-like Audi Q7 drove steadily. Since the Longmai Hot Spring was in the northern suburbs of the capital, it didn't take long for them to get out of the capital. Because Snow Girl was more afraid of the heat, Chi-Yu did not use the warm air in the car. Wen-Ting was naturally not afraid of the cold, but after 2 hours of driving, Chi-Yu, who had lost his energy, felt that his hands and feet were a little numb. The scenery in front seems to be good. Let's stop and take a break. We can also exercise, Chi-Yu suggested. At this time, they had entered the mountains at the junction of the capital and Hebei province. The mountain road was winding, and because it was winter, the surrounding mountains looked bare. From the moment they got in the car, Snow Girl looked around curiously. She was obviously also very interested in this large off-road vehicle. When she heard Chi-Yu said that he wanted to get out of the car and exercise, she immediately agreed. Okay. Chi-Yu stopped the car on the side of a relatively wide road, opened the door and jumped out. Although it was a little colder outside than in the car, at least he could exercise his hands and feet. Although the mountain road was relatively steep, it was within the scope of the national highway, so the road conditions were not bad. Chi-Yu moved his body while looking around, calculating the number of dire beasts that Wen-Ting's father had mentioned. Snow Girl and Wen-Ting also got out of the car. Snow Girl jumped in front of Chi-Yu and said with a smile, Daddy, carry me? Okay. Chi-Yu half squatted down and Snow Girl jumped lightly on his back. Chi-Yu clearly felt that Snow Girl used the wind energy to make her body a lot lighter. Obviously, she was afraid of crushing him. He couldn't help but feel a warmth in his heart. Wen-Ting walked to the side of the two and lit up a fire in her hand. Snow Girl, come and look at the fire. During the day, basically every 2 hours, she would show the fire to Snow Girl. After all, now that they have removed the restriction on Snow Girl, if she returns to the iceberg personality of Snow Girl, then Chi-Yu and Wen-Ting will be in trouble. After all, Snow Girl still had some resistance to the fire. Looking at the light emitted by the fire, she shrunk and hugged Chi-Yu tightly. Wen-Ting didn't last too long. As soon as Snow Girl's spirit responded, she immediately extinguished the fire. Do you want to eat something? After leaving the Dragon Vein hot spring, they replenished a lot of food in the car. After all, if they continued driving, they didn't know when they would see a shop. Snow Girl shook her head and said, No, I ate a lot this morning. Daddy, look, the clouds in the sky are so white. Chi-Yu smiled and patted Snow Girl's little butt. That's not as white as our Snow Girl. Wen-Ting glared at Chi-Yu and said, Where are you touching? Don't forget, Snow Girl is a big girl. Chapter 110. At this time, a large truck drove past them, stirring up a cloud of dust. Chi-Yu quickly retreated to the side, using his body to block Snow Girl and Wen-Ting, preventing them from being stained by the dust. Snow Girl suddenly said, Dad, I seem to feel an energy fluctuation here. Could it be the beast you are looking for? Chi-Yu was stunned. He looked at Wen-Ting doubtfully. Wen-Ting said in surprise, How come I don't feel it, Snow Girl? Where did you feel the energy? Snow Girl pointed to a mountain beside her and said, Over there, there must be. The energy fluctuation is very strong, very similar to Snow Girl's wind energy. Chi Yu and Wen Ting exchanged glances. Although the mountain Snow Girl pointed to could be seen, it was very far from where they were, at least a dozen kilometers away. If Chi Yu still had his energy, he might be able to find the energy fluctuation if he concentrated, but Snow Girl obviously found it by accident. This kind of strong spiritual power was something Chi Yu and Wen Ting couldn't compare to. Chi Yu smiled. Our little baby's senses are so sensitive. Well, let's go and take a look. Snow Girl said, Okay. I'll lead the way. While saying, she gently pressed her palms on Chi Yu's shoulders, and floated up. The wind was generated for her. Wrapped in a faint cyan light, Snow Girl flew up effortlessly. Chi Yu looked at Wen Ting helplessly. I'm relying on you. Wen Ting smiled. She didn't have the ability to fly. She floated to Chi Yu's side and bent down. Chi Yu smiled. He directly leaned on Wen Ting's back. A faint fragrance entered his nose. Chi Yu couldn't help but take a deep breath. He whispered, Ting Ting, you see, it's so good to have a daughter. How about we have a child when we have time? You shameless, who's your wife? Wen Ting let out a soft snort as she leapt into the air. Her feet touched the ground and she shot forward like an arrow. She had a few thousand years of cultivation after all. Even though she wasn't very strong due to the restrictions of the giant beast relic, as the descendant of an ancient ferocious beast and an ancient divine beast, this little bit of road was not a problem for her. A faint fiery shadow appeared around Wen Ting's body. Under the repulsion of the fire energy, she carried Chi Yu on her back as she turned into a red streak of light and leapt down the mountain path in front of her. She chased after Snow Girl in the air towards their destination. The Snow Maiden flew through the air in a relaxed manner. She would occasionally make a series of graceful movements, and it was clear that she was very happy. Only when she glanced down at the fire energy emanating from Wen Ting's body did the smile on her face change slightly. A distance of more than 10 kilometers, whether it was for Snow Girl who could fly, or for Wen Ting, it was nothing. After a while, they had arrived at the foot of the mountain. Chi Yu waved to Snow Girl in the air. Snow Girl floated down and directly jumped into Chi Yu's arms. Chi Yu asked Wen Ting, How is it? Can you feel it now? Wen Ting shook her head in exasperation. Not yet. If there really are great beasts or mythological beasts here, then the Snow Maiden's spiritual power is much more powerful than we imagined. Chi Yu said, Whatever, Snow Girl, lead the way, let's go have a look, but you two must not be too far away from me. If anything happens, we can take care of each other. With the experience of Qialan and the golden-winged eagle last time, now Chi Yu was especially careful when encountering something. The three slowly climbed the mountain. Snow Girl walked in the front, Chi Yu in the middle, and Wen Ting followed behind Chi Yu. Although he had lost his energy, Chi Yu's body was still very good after the training in the Taklamakan Desert, so climbing the mountain was not difficult for him. There was a serious glint in the Snow Lady's deep blue eyes as she walked. She didn't hesitate at all as she made her way to the other side of the mountain. Chi Yu asked Wen Ting several times, but Wen Ting still did not find the existence of any energy. When the three of them took a detour from the dense forest to the other side, Snow Girl suddenly stopped, pointed in the direction of the mountain top, and said, Dad, Mom, it's over there. It seems like there are two kinds of energy. One is the one I felt before, and the other is very similar to the one I felt before. I just reached the foot of the mountain just now. They are two different kinds of energy. Chi Yu looked in the direction Snow Girl pointed. The mountain wall above was completely vertical, there was no road at all, and on the edge of the cliff near the top of the mountain, there was a thick tree extending out from the cliff, and Snow Girl was pointing at that big tree. Chi Yu said, Baby daughter, are you sure? Snow Girl said, Of course I'm sure, Dad. Why don't I go up and take a look first? Chi Yu thought for a moment and said, Let's go up together. I don't feel at ease if you go alone. As he said that, He nodded to Wen Ting, who was beside him. Wen Ting smiled and said to Snow Girl, "Don't be afraid, Mom is going to use some fire energy." Even she herself could not remember when she had completely accepted the role of a mother. Chi Yu signaled Snow Girl to step back a little, and the fiery red light on Wen Ting's body gradually became stronger. The hot air made Snow Girl's pretty face show a trace of pain, and she took the lead to float up and wait in the air. Chi Yu calmed his mind and adjusted his veins to the best condition according to the feeling he was familiar with Wen Ting, and his spiritual power completely felt the fire energy that Wen Ting emitted. With a flash of light, Wen Ting had already floated to his side. The moment Wen Ting turned into a ball of fire, Chi Yu used the energy he received to activate the Kirin bead, and put his and Wen Ting's clothes into it. The surging energy suddenly burst out, and the fiery red arm appeared again. The black and silver light slightly rotated around Chi Yu's body, and in the flash of light, the black Kirin armor appeared. Because of the pair of golden wings on his back, wearing Kirin armor was a little troublesome, so this time Chi Yu did not summon his own Kirin armor from the Kirin bead. After these few days of training, he and Wen Ting were connected, and he no longer needed Kirin armor to guide the energy. The golden wings gently flapped, and the powerful flying ability sent Chi Yu to Snow Girl in an instant. Feeling the strong energy fluctuations on Chi Yu's body, Snow Girl showed a trace of fear, but when she saw Chi Yu's face clearly, the fear naturally disappeared, and she pointed to the big tree and said, "Dad, it's there." After merging with Wen Ting, Chi Yu already had the energy of Kirin 5 clouds, and his spiritual power quickly spread, forming a large net that shrouded the place that Snow Girl said. When his spiritual undulations reached the vicinity, he immediately sensed the energy that the Snow Lady was talking about. There were indeed 2 kinds of energy, but the difference was that these 2 kinds of energy did not seem to come from fierce beasts or magical beasts. The energy was very pure, and it was slightly fluctuating. One of the energy was relatively pure, and the other energy produced rapid fluctuations in the detection of Chi Yu's spiritual power. Let's go and take a look. With the huge Kirin energy as a backing, Chi Yu did not have to worry about encountering anything at all. His figure flashed, and the golden wings on his back retracted, and he had already arrived in front of the big tree that protruded out of the cliff. Chi Yu was surprised to find that this big tree was something that he had never seen before. The trunk was very thick, and all the branches were in a spiral shape, which looked very strange. With the guidance of his spiritual power, he immediately found one of the 2 kinds of energy. Among the many spiral branches, a green fruit that was only the size of a thumb was surrounded. If he had not been close, it would have been really difficult to discover its existence. Chi Yu was surprised to find that the relatively stable and purer energy was emitted from this fruit. At this moment, he could not help but estimate Snow Girl's spiritual power even higher. After all, the energy waves emitted by plants were very close to nature, so it was very difficult to discover, but Snow Girl could actually sense it from more than 10 kilometers away. Chi Yu could not help but secretly admire the strength of her spiritual power. At the same time, he gradually confirmed what Wen Ting had said. It was very likely that Snow Girl had cultivated from a plant, and because of this she could sense the energy of plants so much. "Daddy, what a cute fruit. Mommy said that you're not in good health. I can feel that the energy in this fruit is very pure, so you should eat it. It must be good for your body." Chi Yu was not in a hurry to eat it. He naturally knew that the energy contained in the fruit was very good for him, but there was another kind of energy here. He once heard Master Zagru say that any plant with energy could be described as a treasure of heaven and earth, and this kind of treasure of heaven and earth must be next to it to be guarded. Just when Chi Yu magnified his spiritual power to find the exact location of the other energy, suddenly, there was an ear-piercing scream. Suddenly, a dark green light pierced in the direction of Chi Yu like lightning. Behind Chi Yu was Snow Girl, so he could not dodge. Although Snow Girl was not weak, Chi-Yu had already integrated himself into the role of a father. How could he let any possibility of the daughter in his heart being hurt? A cold light flashed in his eyes, and he placed his left hand in front of his chest. Kiran's thundercloud force was operating at high speed in his body, and a blue light ball appeared in the middle of Chi-Yu's palm out of thin air, directly blocking the attack. Chi-Yu, be careful. Wen Ting warned him in time. Just when the dark green light was about to reach Chi-Yu, the seemingly sharp light suddenly exploded. Countless dark green electric currents with energy 10 times stronger than before completely enveloped Chi-Yu and Snow Girl. Suddenly feeling such a powerful energy, Chi-Yu could not help but be shocked. He was very experienced in fighting, and when he suddenly encountered a dangerous situation, he almost immediately dodged and retreated with his back pressed against Snow Girl's body, and retreated with her. The blue light ball in the middle of his palm had already formed a water curtain to meet the attack. Of course, Chi-Yu did not expect this water curtain to be able to resist the opponent's attack. All he needed to do was to buy time. The moment the water curtain broke, black and silver light entangled, and the smooth Kiran's mirror instantly appeared on Chi-Yu's left arm. With the Kiran's mirror in hand, Chi-Yu's heart immediately calmed down, and he watched as the dark green light whistled towards him. His arm moved like lightning, and with a simple arc, the defensive range of the Kiran's mirror was expanded to a diameter of 2 meters, completely protecting himself and Snow Girl behind him. In a concentrated burst of energy explosions, Chi-Yu's body kept retreating. He was shocked to find that the opponent's attack energy was extremely strong, and the attack power was very overbearing. However, he did not feel the existence of any energy attribute in the opponent's attack. What is going on? What is this thing? The answer soon appeared. The big tree with the spiral branches suddenly moved, and the thick trunk lifted up. Inside the trunk, a dark green lizard drilled out. The lizard's body was about 1.5 meters long, and it was a giant lizard. The dark green scales all over its body sparkled under the sunlight, forming a sharp contrast. It had a pair of red eyes that seemed to be filled with the aura of death. Its tongue was constantly flicking in and out of its mouth, and it was lying on the big tree, staring fiercely at Chi-Yu. The scales on its body opened and closed, and layers of dark green light were constantly emitted from its body. The most peculiar thing was its tail. A lizard's tail should be hanging behind or parallel to its body, but this lizard was different. Its tail was curled up, and at the tip of the tail there was a triangular protrusion. The protrusion was the size of a fist, and it was constantly flashing with green light. Ting Ting, what is this thing? Chi-Yu asked Wen Ting in his mind. Wen Ting replied, it's a vicious beast. I've only heard of it, but I didn't expect this kind of vicious beast to actually exist. You have to be careful, this is a very special vicious beast called the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. Its attack methods are relatively simple. You saw its tail, right? That protrusion is its full attack power. Judging from the attack power of that green phosphorus tree splitting lizard, it has at least 3,000 years of cultivation. I didn't expect us to find a target so quickly. From the moment the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard is born, it likes to live around some strange plants, and absorb the energy of the plants to increase its own strength. Young green phosphorus tree splitting lizards are very weak, but when they grow up to 3,000 years, they can enter the ranks of powerful vicious beasts. Generally speaking, the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard likes to live alone. Although its attack power is only from its tail, the scales on its body have extremely strong defense, and it's very fast. Fortunately, it can't fly. You have to be careful and finish the battle quickly. Daddy, it's so ugly. Do you need Snow Girl's help? Snow Girl looked at the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard, not the slightest bit afraid. Chi-Yu said, Snow Girl, you retreat far away. Watch Daddy take care of it. As he spoke, the energy light on Chi-Yu's body gradually became stronger. At the same time, his body flew into the air, about 100 meters away, and stared at the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard below. "You can't fly, right? I'm bullying you because you can't fly." Snow Girl listened to Chi-Yu's words and retreated a little, curiously watching how Chi-Yu would deal with it. A purple light slowly condensed on Chi-Yu's hands. His palms faced each other, and a strong electric current began to revolve around his body. His eyes emitted a faint cold light, and as the electric current condensed, a purple ball of light gradually appeared between his palms. Ever since Chi-Yu had lost his own thundercloud force, he had only fought with Snow Girl. The feeling of having the combined power made him feel a strong need to vent. A strong fighting spirit continuously burst out of his body, and the huge pressure produced by Kirin's 5 clouds realm actually caused the surrounding air to begin to distort. The green phosphorus tree splitting lizard raised its head to look at Chi-Yu in the air. The huge pressure brought by Kirin made it subconsciously take 2 steps back, but the fierce light in its eyes became even stronger. It didn't have the slightest intention of retreating. Its red eyes formed a sharp contrast with its green body, revealing a fierce light. The dark green scales all over its body stood up, and its tail was raised, emitting a dark green light. Chi-Yu floated in the air, taking advantage of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's inability to fly to gain the upper hand. He was very confident in himself, and the purple ball of light in his hand became stronger and stronger. Before Chi-Yu's thundercloud force disappeared, his thundercloud force had actually already reached 5 clouds, and he had always been very experienced in using thundercloud force. Facing only one fierce beast, he naturally wouldn't use the energy-consuming large area attack, 100 lightning strikes. The thundercloud force in his hand became more and more concentrated, and the light in Chi-Yu's eyes also became stronger and stronger. However, neither Chi-Yu nor the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard noticed that Snow Girl, who was floating not far away from them, seemed to be affected by Chi-Yu's thundercloud force. Her beautiful eyes gradually changed from attentiveness to blankness, looking at Chi-Yu as she floated there in a daze. With a loud shout, the thundercloud energy that had been strongly compressed under his control finally exploded. Under the pull of the chi, the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard didn't even have the chance to dodge. A purple lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket descended from the sky, twisting and covering the body of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. When Chi-Yu made his move, he still controlled it a little and didn't use his full strength. This was because, although the thundercloud force's explosive attack power was the strongest among his 4 types of thundercloud force, it was also the most unstable and difficult to control. For the sake of the fruit on that strange tree, Chi-Yu raised his control power to the limit when he attacked. This caused the energy to naturally be restrained. After all, the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard was on that strange tree. With a slight smile, Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a faint cold light. The purple lightning in the sky was just as he had imagined. In an instant, it had already swallowed the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body. At the same time, under Chi-Yu's deliberate control, the thundercloud force had a bit of a suction ability, pulling the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body away from the tree trunk without causing the slightest bit of damage to the strange tree. The ingenuity of his energy control made even Chi-Yu feel very satisfied. An ear-piercing sharp sound instantly rang out from within the lightning. Chi-Yu, who had originally thought that the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body had been completely paralyzed, couldn't help but be shocked. He could clearly feel that the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body could actually still move within the purple lightning that had already condensed into a 3-meter diameter light shield. At this moment, the energy on the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body exploded. A dark green light seemed to have penetrated Chi-Yu's lightning in an instant and arrived in front of him. Chi-Yu's combat experience was very rich. In the face of this sudden attack, he had already subconsciously reacted. His left hand instantly crossed in front of his chest, and the Kirin mirror suddenly appeared. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's attack didn't have the slightest effect on the smooth mirror surface that flashed with black and silver light. However, Chi-Yu discovered that the strength of the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's attack had clearly increased compared to before. It was precisely because of this attack that Chi-Yu's control over the thundercloud force was interrupted. Countless purple lightning filled the air. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body fell back to its original position, while Chi-Yu's body rose about 3 meters into the air. Why was his overbearing thundercloud force actually unable to harm the opponent? Chi-Yu's brain was working quickly. He could feel that the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's energy strength was clearly much weaker than his. Furthermore, under the effect of the pressure he had emitted earlier, it was already at a complete disadvantage. However, under the situation where he had unleashed his powerful thundercloud force, the opponent was actually able to retreat unscathed. This was simply unbelievable. Even if he hadn't used his thundercloud force, at least 80% of his energy had been unleashed. After a brief moment of thought, Chi-Yu quickly found the crux of the problem. From Wen Ting's previous introduction of the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard, he realized that it wasn't because the opponent was strong enough to block his attack, but because of the opponent's attribute. This green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard liked to be with plants, and its energy was filled with the aura of nature. From an energy perspective, its energy could be said to be the most unique he had ever seen. Not only was the energy very pure, but when it was unleashed, it could also reveal an unprecedented feeling. This was definitely related to plants. Plants might also be damaged by lightning, but if the layer of scales on the surface of the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body had some characteristics of plants that did not conduct electricity, such as rubber trees, then it was very normal for his own thundercloud force to be ineffective. After figuring out the reason, Chi-Yu's heart instantly calmed down. The opponent was a plant, so it might not conduct electricity. However, plants were all afraid of one type of energy, and that was fire. Thinking of this, Chi-Yu slowly raised his right hand and looked at the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard below. The thundercloud force in his body instantly changed, and the Kirin pearl on his chest had already turned from purple to red. Not far away, Snow Girl was observing them. At this moment, the light in her eyes had already turned from blank to cold. Watching the confrontation between Chi-Yu and the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard, her hands silently emitted a green-blue light. Her body was slowly floating, and she carefully approached Chi-Yu. Chi-Yu didn't notice any of this. With a boom, the black Kirin armor on Chi-Yu's body suddenly emitted a huge ball of flames. His body seemed to be burning in the flames. Looking at the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard below, Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a trace of disdain. His body didn't move, and one fireball after another the size of a ping-pong ball flew towards the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard below. When the flames suddenly appeared, Snow Girl was less than 20 meters away from Chi-Yu. When she suddenly saw the flames, her body immediately stopped. An intense struggle appeared in her eyes, and her delicate body trembled slightly. At the same time, the light on her hands had already returned to its normal state. Naturally, Chi-Yu didn't know that he had already escaped danger thanks to luck. The fireball might be small, but it didn't mean that its power was small. When Chi-Yu activated the fire thundercloud force, he also used the thundercloud force to increase the fireball's speed to the limit. It let out an ear-piercing whistle in the air, and bombarded the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard like small cannonballs. When the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard suddenly saw the flames, the red light in its eyes suddenly shrank. Chi-Yu's judgment was correct. For a natural-type savage beast like it, what it feared the most was fire. Without any hesitation, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's tail was like a heavy machine gun, constantly emitting dark green light, accurately intercepting the small fireballs in the air. This was actually what Chi-Yu wanted to see the most. The reason why he had condensed the fire thundercloud force into small fireballs instead of a strong, large-scale attack was because he was afraid of damaging the tree, especially the fruit on the tree that contained mysterious energy. The stalemate of the battle was obviously not what Chi-Yu wanted to see. As the small fireballs were blocked one by the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard, Chi-Yu's body, which was floating in the air, was gradually closing in on the lizard. He knew very well that due to the fact that their attributes were mutually exclusive, if the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard wanted to block his attacks, it would need to expend much more energy than he did. In terms of overall energy, it was inferior to him. However, with his previous battle experience, Chi-Yu knew that these savage beasts that had cultivated for more than 3,000 years all had their own life-saving technique. He absolutely did not want to fall into danger because of a moment of carelessness. Therefore, after some simple consideration, he decided to use this method to first deplete the opponent's energy, and then finish off the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard in one fell swoop after being weakened. As Chi-Yu gradually closed in, not only was his body descending, but that huge pressure was also enveloping the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard tighter and tighter. Under the effect of the pressure, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's protective energy had already begun to weaken, and the fireball attacks were also becoming more and more concentrated as the distance closed. In fact, Chi-Yu's strongest thundercloud force right now was the fire thundercloud force. His energy came from the support of Wen-Ting's status as a living almighty beast relic, and as a living almighty beast relic, Wen-Ting's attribute was fire. Therefore, after Chi-Yu received Wen-Ting's energy, although there was some energy conversion, at the end of the day, fire energy was still the strongest. Therefore, this kind of highly compressed fireball attack was completely effortless for him. When the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard saw Chi-Yu approaching, its gaze suddenly fell on the green fruit not far in front of it. The ferocious light in its red eyes suddenly became even more intense. It suddenly raised its head and let out a shrill howl. The dark green light surrounding its body suddenly became stronger, and a dark red shadow floated out from the green fruit. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard opened its mouth and swallowed the dark red light. Just as the dark red light entered its mouth, Chi-Yu suddenly felt that the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard, which had been suppressed by him to the point of being unable to retaliate, suddenly changed. An incomparably huge surge of energy rapidly exploded in all directions with its body as the center. The small fireballs that Chi-Yu had sent out were no longer blocked by the energy from its tail. Instead, they were directly intercepted by the dark green light that had instantly expanded to a range of 3 meters. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard roared angrily at the sky, and its body retreated like lightning, landing on the rocks of the cliff. Its originally 1.5 meters tall body trembled violently, and its blood-red eyes revealed an intense ferocious light. At this moment its body also began to change. Not good, Chi-Yu, our judgment was wrong. It actually placed the NEI pill in that fruit to absorb its essence. Without the NEI pill, it would already have a cultivation of over 3,000 years. If it swallowed the NEI pill, I'm afraid that even if this green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard didn't have a cultivation of 10,000 years, it wouldn't be too far off. You must be extremely careful. If you can't handle it, then let's not attack anymore. Wen-Ting's voice rang out. Although she couldn't see what was happening outside, she could sense what Chi-Yu was paying attention to through Chi-Yu's senses. Just as Wen-Ting reminded Chi-Yu, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body had already undergone earth-shattering changes. Its body, which was originally only 1.5 meters long, instantly expanded. First, it was the expansion of energy. Immediately after, its body actually grew longer and wider. In just a few blinks of an eye, its body had exceeded 5 meters in length. The dark green scales on its body had turned emerald green, and its red eyes had also turned deep blue. Its limbs had become 10 times thicker than before. The most peculiar thing was that, on its head, there was actually a horn that was half a meter long. The horn was silver, which was completely different from the color of its body. Although Chiyu was shocked, he didn't plan to leave. After all, he had the golden-winged rock's ability to soar 90,000 miles. If he wanted to, he could leave the battlefield at any time. Moreover, even if the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard had become stronger, he didn't think that he wouldn't have a chance. After the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body had undergone a mutation, its aura was clearly different. Previously, it had been completely suppressed by Chiyu, but now, its aura was completely on par with Chiyu's. Its deep blue eyes stared at Chiyu without a trace of emotion. Its huge tail was still raised high, and the bumps on it had already turned purple. Chapter 111. Chiyu was currently about 50 meters away from the cliff. Seeing the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard pounce towards him, he didn't dodge. The flames on his body instantly became even more intense. Under the urging of his thoughts, the originally black scales were covered in a layer of gorgeous fiery red armor. Kiran's red appeared. After all, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body was too big. Even if the power of its tail was astonishing, and the energy of its body could also help it lighten its body to a certain extent, it couldn't fly. When its body rose to about 20 meters, the speed of its ascent had already slowed, and it was about to fall back to the ground. Just as its body rose to the highest point, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's tail suddenly changed from up to down. A deep purple light instantly shot out. Using the reaction force of the energy, its nearly stagnant body sped up again. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Chiyu. The opponent didn't release any energy, but that didn't mean that Chiyu would be careless. His own strongest ability was Kiran's horn. No one knew better than Chiyu how terrifying the power of the ultimate Kiran's arm was. He didn't know what kind of power the silver horn of this green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard, which had a cultivation of over 6,000 years, had, but he was already on guard. Chiyu had never been afraid of close combat. Seeing the green phosphor tree-splitting lizard's huge head with its single horn coming at him, his body instantly shifted to the side, practically sticking to the horn. After the horn, it was naturally the green phosphor tree-splitting lizard's large head. In close combat, Chiyu's body moved to the side. The energy emitted by the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body and the scorching flames emitted by Kiran's red cancelled each other out. Whether it was Chiyu or the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard, they were both exposed to each other. Chiyu's speed was something that the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard couldn't compare to. In the instant they passed, Chiyu's right fist, which was shining with black, silver, and red light, had already been swung out with a loud shout. Chiyu's choice of target was very particular. It was the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's root. With a loud bang, the green phosphor tree-splitting lizard's huge head suddenly sank downwards. From its huge mouth, a dark green liquid sprayed out, and the single horn on its head actually became a bit crooked. The place where Chiyu's punch landed was dented by half a foot. The scales on his body trembled violently. Chiyu was suddenly alarmed, because he suddenly remembered that the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard couldn't fly. What good could it do by forcefully using energy to bounce its body into the air? It would be completely exposed to his attack. However, it still bounced up. As a vicious beast with more than 6,000 years of intelligence, this kind of choice was clearly not a wise one, unless it had another purpose. Just as Chiyu was about to give the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard another punch, the horn that it had used to attack Chiyu suddenly let out a loud bang. Immediately after, a silver energy of an unknown attribute surged out. In an instant, it enveloped an area of more than 100 square meters. Like a huge net, it completely enveloped Chiyu's body and the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body. Chiyu's punch landed on empty air. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's speed had increased by almost 3 times. Before Chiyu's attack, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard had already stuck close to the silver net. The silver net was only a dozen or so meters in diameter, while the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body was more than 5 meters long. This spherical net actually floated in midair and didn't fall down. In this narrow space, Chi-Yu once again saw the green phosphor tree-splitting lizard's eerie white teeth. It was as if he could see this gigantic monster smiling at him with a savage expression. What a treacherous setup! Chi-Yu thought to himself. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard risked being attacked by me to set up this light net. There's only one purpose, and that is to restrict my body in this narrow space, making it impossible for me to display my advantage in agility. In this kind of situation, the strength of its energy is much stronger than mine, and it also has a tyrannical body. It will be difficult for me to obtain victory. Moreover, now that I'm enveloped by the light net, even the golden-winged rock's rapid flight ability to escape is no longer needed. Dark green liquid was dripping from the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's mouth. It was obvious that the powerful punch that Chi-Yu had used Kirin's arm had caused it significant injuries. But because of the appearance of the silver light net, the situation had already taken a turn for the worse. The disadvantageous side had already changed. At this time, Snow Girl was not far away from the outside. She had previously seen the flames become dazed, but now she had regained a faint coldness. She did not rush forward to help Chi-Yu, nor did she leave. She only retreated 100 meters, floating in the air and observing quietly. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard was accumulating energy. Chi-Yu also quietly flicked a cloud of fire behind him, testing the strength of the silver light net's energy. What surprised Chi-Yu was that the silver light net seemed to be an illusion. Once the energy passed through, there was no obstruction at all. What's going on? In his shock, Chi-Yu's body flashed 3 times in a row in the narrow space, moving near the silver light net. He quietly used his hand to knock on the light net. This time, his shock became even greater. The moment his hand came into contact with the light net, it was as if he had touched a strip of light. But when he tried to release energy from his hand to destroy the light net, he found that the energy passed through the light net, unable to do anything. Chi-Yu, there's no need to try. This should be the Energy Immunity Silver Dragon cover. It's one of the famous barriers in the vicious beast world, specially used to bind mythological beasts with strong energy but relatively weak physical strength. As Kirin, your physical strength is also very tyrannical. But before you reach the Seven Clouds realm, it's impossible to destroy the Silver Dragon cover with just your physical strength. At the same time, since the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard has activated this ability, it won't give you time to destroy it. This silver dragon cover is outstanding in both toughness and elasticity. Unless you can reach a higher level than 7 clouds, there's no way you can destroy it in one go. I didn't expect this green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard to have this kind of mutated ability. Compared to an ordinary vicious beast like it, this is simply an anomaly. Looks like it must have something to do with that green fruit. Chi-Yu controlled his body to quickly change directions 6 times in the narrow space before he flashed out of the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's frenzied pounce. Within this silver dragon cover, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's huge body clearly displayed a huge advantage. Tyrannical energy constantly attacked Chi-Yu from its tail in a fan shape. Coupled with the pounce of its body, the space left for Chi-Yu to dodge was really too narrow. Chi-Yu carefully dealt with it while conversing with Wen-Ting through his mind. Then what should I do now? How can I break this silver dragon cover? Wen-Ting hurriedly said, There's only one way, kill the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard. Although it has more than 6,000 years of cultivation, it's not as agile as you. It's a pity there's not enough space, otherwise it definitely wouldn't be your match. Chi-Yu's eyes revealed a trace of a strange smile. Who said there's not enough space? The fiery red light suddenly retracted. At this time, Chi-Yu actually withdrew Kirin's red back into his body. His own defense immediately dropped substantially, relying on Kieran's mirror to block the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's energy attack. His body no longer dodged. The golden wings on his back retracted, and the 4 types of clouds simultaneously retracted. Surging black and silver light condensed on his right fist. He roared, Kieran's arm, Skybreaker. Boom! Fist and horn collided. The entire silver dragon cover space instantly erupted with an incomparable energy storm. Unfortunately, this silver dragon cover was energy immunity. Even if the energy storm was huge, it couldn't cause any damage. It couldn't cause any damage to it, but Snow Girl, who was 100 meters away, had no choice but to retreat another 100 meters, avoiding the center of this energy whirlwind. A huge Kieran silhouette appeared out of thin air behind Chiyu. A somewhat strange scene appeared. This Kieran silhouette was clearly in energy form, and because the silver dragon cover was too narrow, half of Kieran's silhouette was actually inside the silver dragon cover, while the other half was outside. Chiyu and the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's bodies were simultaneously bounced back, heavily crashing into the silver dragon cover. Chiyu's face looked somewhat pale. Although fusing with Wen-Ting had increased the tower crane's energy to the 5 clouds realm, this wasn't his own energy after all. His right arm was transformed from Wen-Ting. Under the violent clash of energy, he immediately felt a little powerless. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's silver horn had a unique advantage. Its hardness was unexpectedly not damaged even after clashing with Chiyu's Kieran's arm. However, under the violent shock, it seemed to have affected the previous injury on its head. It spat out a few mouthfuls of green liquid, and its gaze towards Chiyu became even more ferocious. Circles of emerald green light continuously spread around. Under the effect of the surging energy, the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard let out an angry roar towards the sky. Its huge body actually shrank a bit, and at this moment, the silver horn on its head lit up. The silver dragon cover from before had been released by this horn. At this moment, this horn actually lit up with a pentagonal ring of light. The energy was like a solid object, slowly shrinking. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's eyes stared vigilantly at Chiyu. Chiyu knew that the real fatal attack was coming. However, at this moment, his eyes actually revealed a hint of a smile, and within this smile, there was also a hint of disdain. He wiped his right hand across his chest, and a dark red light floated out. Chiyu's wrist shook, and that dark red light had already floated up. He folded his hands in front of his chest, forming a strange hand seal. Divine light shot out from his eyes, and he shouted in a deep voice, word by word, 1,000 mechanisms, 100 transformations, Xian, Pearl, Realm, Technique. A trace of doubt appeared in the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's eyes. At this moment, black and silver light spiraled out from Chiyu's strange hand seal, and the Kieran silhouette behind him instantly fused into his body. At the same time, the pair of golden wings on his back also disappeared. In an instant, within this narrow silver dragon cover, a thick dark red fog suddenly appeared, and then everything in the surroundings changed. Chiyu flipped his wrist, and the hand seal immediately changed. He said indifferently, 1,000 and transformations, Xian Ji Realm, Space Expansion. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard only felt that its eyes had suddenly sunk into darkness. Somewhat terrified, it immediately released the silver pentagonal ring of light on its horn, which had yet to completely condense enough energy. However, after the silver pentagonal ring sank into the darkness in front of it, it quietly disappeared. Everything in the surroundings lit up again, but this time, the surrounding space had turned dark red. The silver dragon cover had disappeared, and the originally narrow space had become abnormally vast, with no end in sight. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard could clearly see that Chiyu was actually several hundred meters in front of it, and his silver eyes were staring at it emotionlessly. The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard looked around in terror, and for the first time, Its huge eyes that were filled with savagery revealed a feeling of fear. Originally, it could not fly, but it was actually floating in this dark red space. Looking at Chi-Yu in the distance, it let out an angry roar, and the large tail behind it suddenly swept up. A fan-shaped green energy enveloped Chi-Yu, and at the same time, the silver horn on its head once again began to condense energy. Chi-Yu's body suddenly disappeared at the same time as the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's attack arrived. His cold voice rang out from every corner of the space. "You have a barrier-type ability, but do you think I don't? In this space, I am the master." The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard sensed the appearance of danger, and turned around abruptly, just in time to see Chi-Yu 100 meters behind it, looking at it with a disdainful expression. The infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique relied on the power of Kiran's and Chi-Yu's own Kiran's bloodline to activate, and its divine aura was precisely in the 4 words infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique. The range of its transformations could be said to be all-encompassing. Spatial expansion was only one of its abilities. Although the silver dragon cover could indeed bind Chi-Yu in a narrow space, Chi-Yu relied on the wonders of the infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique, and the principle of containing Mount Sumeru in a mustard seed, to activate this powerful domain that belonged only to Kiran for the first time. Although he was still very unfamiliar with the application of the infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique, and had only mastered 2 of its transformations, for the current him, it was already enough. Among these 2 abilities, besides spatial expansion, the other was teleportation. The reason for the spatial expansion was because Chi-Yu knew that his great golden-winged eagle's ability to soar 90,000 miles into the sky could only be used in a sufficient amount of space. This ability was precisely used to bind him within a certain range. As for teleportation, there was no special purpose, but when Chi-Yu saw the vampire prince perform teleportation, he was very envious, and so deliberately mastered this transformation first. To be able to master these 2 transformations in a short span of 5 days was already his limit. The first time he used it, Chi-Yu immediately understood the wonders of the infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique. The moment he activated this domain that belonged to him, the originally restricted space immediately disappeared. In reality, Chi-Yu and the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard were still within the silver dragon cover, but with the wonders of the realm technique, the space within the silver dragon cover had already been expanded infinitely, and could no longer restrict Chi-Yu's movements. In this dark red space, Chi-Yu clearly felt that he was in control of everything. The energy of the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard was no longer terrifying. Perhaps the energy of the silver 5-pointed star that it emitted had a very terrifying offensive power, but it could not hit him at all, so what use could it be? The green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's body pounced towards Chi-Yu at lightning speed. After absorbing the NEI pill, its speed was very astonishing, and it arrived in front of Chi-Yu in practically just a few leaps. The silver 5-pointed star on its head instantly expanded, enveloping Chi-Yu's body, and at the same time, using its tyrannical body, it directly collided with Chi-Yu. Within the infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique, how could Chi-Yu give it a chance? With a cold laugh, his body disappeared once again before the silver light enveloped his body. "Idiot, I'm here, you big reptile." Chi-Yu appeared in another direction. Looking at the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard, the disdain in his eyes intensified. The green phosphor tree-splitting lizard panted heavily. It was indeed smart. It realized that it couldn't attack Chi-Yu at all. However, he did not take the initiative to attack. Chi-Yu praised in his heart. A vicious beast that was over 6,000 years old indeed possessed extraordinary intelligence. He could not afford to waste time with the other party. Almost 10 minutes had passed since the start of the battle. If he were to wait until the other party's energy was almost depleted, he would probably have to cancel the fusion. Looking at the green phosphorus tree-splitting lizard's defensive posture, he couldn't help but sneer. "Big guy, do you think I can't do anything to you just like that?" Previously, the reason why Chi-Yu had put away the Kirin's tooth was to conserve his energy. The infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique was good, but before he could completely master it, he needed to consume an enormous amount of energy. Therefore, Chi-Yu only gave himself 10 minutes of safety in this domain. Within these 10 minutes, he had to destroy his opponent. As Chi-Yu's figure disappeared once again, the green phosphor tree splitting lizard's body quickly turned, searching for a blind spot in its line of sight, afraid that Chi-Yu would suddenly appear and launch an attack. However, no matter how hard it searched, it couldn't search in all directions at once. Therefore, the silver pentagram above its head continuously emitted layers of energy in an attempt to probe Chi-Yu's location. Unfortunately, it was currently within the infinite transformation of 4 stars realm technique, and any probing energy had no effect, just like how the silver dragon shield was immune to energy attack. An enormous amount of energy appeared, and Chi-Yu's body appeared behind the green phosphor tree splitting lizard's left in a flash. His right arm began to continuously gather energy, and as it watched the black, silver, and red energy continuously accumulate, the fear in the green phosphor tree splitting lizard's eyes intensified. Chi-Yu slowly raised his right hand. Although teleportation might not be able to help him successfully attack the green phosphor tree splitting lizard's vital points, teleportation gave him sufficient time. Originally, in a situation where both parties were enemies, it was impossible for any opponent to allow him to completely gather energy before launching an attack. However, with teleportation, this situation had changed. In order to conserve energy, the green phosphor tree splitting lizard did not activate the silver pentagram above its head. Instead, its figure flashed, and it pounced towards Chi-Yu. From the 2 previous encounters with Chi-Yu, it was very clear how terrifying the power of the Kirin arm was. If it allowed Chi-Yu to gather enough energy, it might not be able to withstand it. Appear. Following Chi-Yu's low shout, the originally thread-like tricolored light suddenly became as thick as chopsticks. At the same time, his body had already appeared hundreds of meters away, and he easily dodged the green phosphor tree splitting lizard's pounce. Ice! With another loud shout, the coercion on Chi-Yu's body suddenly became stronger. A layer of black light appeared above his face, and the energy in his right arm had already begun to fluctuate unstably. At the same time, the Kirin pearl in front of his chest had already changed from its original 4-colored light to a completely silver color, just like his terrifying silver eyes. The green phosphor tree splitting lizard unwillingly pounced forward again, and the result was still the same. However, the voice that came out of Chi-Yu's mouth had changed. Battle. The dark red light within the 4 stars boundary technique had a slight fluctuation. Because he had used too much of the energy in the Kirin Pearl's bloodline, there was already a slight problem with the boundary that Chi-Yu was supporting. Swordsman. Every time the green phosphor tree splitting lizard was within 10 meters of him, Chi-Yu's body would calmly move away. Following the 4th voice of the 9 secret words, his right arm had already turned into a transparent light, as if his arm was completely formed from the combination of the black, silver, and red lights. The energy was slightly trembling, and layers of tricolored halos were constantly appearing on Chi-Yu's arm, drifting outwards. In fact, even for Chi-Yu, this was the first time that he had used the Kirin arm like this. In the past, he also knew of this method of using the Kirin arm, but because he didn't use it very often in actual combat, he had never used it before. But now, his opponent had given him ample time, and he didn't have to worry about having to endure the opponent's attack and interrupting the condensation of his energy. Every time the Qilin increased its strength by 1 cloud, it could use 1 more word of the 9 syllables. Chi-Yu, who was at the 5-cloud realm, had already raised his strength to the limit. At the same time, the Jade Pearl realm technique of myriad possibilities and 100 changes began to fluctuate violently. The dark red light turned into rolling clouds. Without enough energy to support it, it was on the verge of dissipating. Roar! The green phosphorus tree splitting lizard seemed to be very clear that it had reached the juncture of life and death. It roared fiercely, and the silver light of the five-pointed star on its head was no longer in a halo state, but had become completely solid. It didn't chase after Chi-Yu anymore, and instead spat out a purple pearl of light from its mouth, which directly merged into the silver star of light emitted from the horn. While Chi-Yu was condensing energy, the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard was also prepared to stake everything on one throw. A trace of a mischievous glint appeared in Chi-Yu's eyes. His body disappeared for the last time within the 4 stars boundary technique. Just as the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard was spinning its body to search for traces of Chi-Yu, Chi-Yu changed the order of moving in all directions and quietly appeared above its body. By the time the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard reacted, Chi-Yu had already floated down, exerted force with both legs, and directly clamped down on the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's neck. "Your horn isn't bad, give it to me." Chi-Yu smiled lasciviously. His right hand suddenly stretched out, and a heavy punch bombarded the place where he had previously made a dent. His body crouched down, and flashed past the edge of the silver 5-pointed star that the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard had sent out. Kieran's arm, which had been enhanced by the 9 secret words, instantly erupted. With a loud bang, it collided with the silver 5-pointed star from the side. One was a deliberate move, while the other was a panicked response. Even if the energy of the two were equal, at this moment, victory and defeat had already been decided. From the moment Chi-Yu had displayed the 4 stars boundary technique, there was no longer any suspense about the outcome. The dark red domain brought about by the 4 stars boundary technique completely disappeared along with the surging energy explosion. Light reappeared, and Chi-Yu and the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard simultaneously appeared on both sides of the silver dragon shroud. A hole the size of a soccer ball had appeared from the top of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's head all the way down to its lower forehead. The silver horn and nei pill on its head had already disappeared. Its enormous body was trembling incessantly, and the scales all over its body continuously made rustling sounds. Large amounts of dark green liquid gushed out from the hole. It was obvious that it was no longer alive. Chi-Yu floated within the silver dragon shroud, feeling the energy of the silver dragon shroud disappearing. The silver horn that the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard had relied on the most was currently in his right hand. Holding the tip of the horn, Chi-Yu could feel that the horn, which weighed at least 100 kilograms, was constantly emitting energy that was different from the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body. Chi-Yu couldn't help but feel a little excited in his heart. The gains from today's battle were much more abundant than he had imagined. However, his current condition wasn't very good. The excessive consumption of energy had already caused his and Wen-Ting's bodies to reduce the amount of time they could fight. According to Chi-Yu's own estimates, the fusion would end in 10 minutes at most. With a flash of silver light, the silver dragon shroud finally disappeared. Holding the silver horn in his hand, Chi-Yu watched as the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's enormous body fell heavily from a height of several tens of meters before crashing onto the rocks. After losing its silver horn and nei pill, its body was rapidly shrinking. By the time it hit the ground, it had already returned to its original length of 1.5 meters. However, Chi-Yu had to admit that its life force was strong. Even with its head pierced through, it still hadn't died. Its eyes, which had turned back to red, revealed a layer of deathly gray. It looked at Chi-Yu with unwillingness, and the energy on its body fluctuated unstably. Floating down to the top of the strange tree, Chi-Yu looked at the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard and gently shook his head, saying, "Unfortunately, you've met me today. Let me try out the devour skill that I've just learned on you." Ever since Wen-Ting's father had imparted the spiritual brand to him, Chi-Yu had spent the most time on the Devour skill besides researching the Fusion skill and the Thousand Opportunities transformation skill. After all, only the Devour skill could help him recover his previous strength. The green phosphorus tree splitting lizard crawled towards Chi-Yu step by step. Its increasingly lifeless eyes weren't looking at Chi-Yu, but at the green fruit in the spiral branches. It seemed to yearn to be able to obtain the green fruit, but its life force was quickly disappearing. Chi-Yu smiled faintly and said, "Do you think I'll give you the chance to counterattack?" He slowly raised his right hand, and energy once again condensed in his palm. The Devour skill was about to be activated. As long as he could completely absorb the spirit chi in the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body before it died, Chi-Yu's goal would be achieved. Just when Chi-Yu thought that everything was foolproof, an incomparably cold chill suddenly shot out from the back of his heart like lightning. Chi-Yu's entire body stiffened. At this extremely critical moment, it was already too late for him to turn around. He could only place his left hand behind his back and use the horn of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard to block the attack coming from behind him. With a soft ding, Chi-Yu felt his entire body shake. A cold air had already wrapped around his body, and it was as if his blood had frozen. Although the energy in his body was circulating at high speed to dissolve the cold air, he still couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood under the condition that his meridians had been shaken. Fiercely turning around, Chi-Yu looked at the dazed snow girl who had been shaken back. He said in shock, "You? How is this possible?" Snow Girl had already recovered from her shock. Looking at the horn in Chi-Yu's hand, she said indifferently, "I have to admit, your luck is really good. If it wasn't for that silver horn, I'm afraid that even if you didn't die, you would have been seriously injured." She had condensed all the energy in her body for the sneak attack just now. Originally, she was determined to succeed. However, she hadn't expected that she would only slightly injure Chi-Yu's meridians. Chi-Yu subconsciously understood. Snow Girl had actually turned back into the iceberg Snow Girl while he was fighting with the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. That was impossible. When Ting had just shown her the fire when they were in the car. How did it change back so quickly? Snow Girl clearly saw through Chi-Yu's doubts. She said coldly, "Don't try to use fire to make me lose myself. That's already impossible. Following the contact with you guys, I gradually felt like another soul. Although I can't control it, I can clearly see it. Let me tell you the reason. Weren't you guys training the Snow Girl, who calls you Daddy, to gradually adapt to the feeling of fire and not fear it? However, you have forgotten one thing. After all, she and I have the same body. While she is adapting to the fire, I am also adapting to it. Hence, the time it takes for me to wake up is getting shorter and shorter. Until the last time you showed me the fire, I had almost completely adapted to it. Hence, I am me now. I will never become that pitiful little girl again." Chapter 112. Enough. Iceberg Snow Girl shouted coldly, "You don't have to say these things to me. You have imprisoned me for so many days, you deserve to die. Moreover, you have violated my body. Today there is only one ending for you, and that is death." Snow Girl, even if you want to kill me, you have to make it clear. I am a gentleman. Even he didn't quite believe this. When did I violate your body? Snow Girl's pretty blue face turned slightly red, and she said coldly, "When I was that soul, do you dare to say that you didn't hug me? You have tarnished my holy body." "That's not right, Snow Girl. You have wronged me. That Ming Ming, it was you who took the initiative to hug me." Chi-Yu looked at her. He couldn't help but love and hate her. They were the same person. How could there be such a big difference? Not to mention that he didn't have enough energy in his body. Even if he had enough energy, he couldn't be cruel to Snow Girl, who had once called him father. Looking at the increasing cold aura on Snow Girl, Chi-Yu knew that it was time for him to make a move. After all, the fusion time was not long. Just when Chi-Yu was about to make a move, Snow Girl's gaze suddenly fell behind him. Her big eyes revealed a surprised light. Chi-Yu laughed in his heart, trying to use psychological tactics on me? When I turn around, you will suddenly attack. Dream on. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Chi-Yu suddenly thought of something, no longer caring whether Snow Girl was using psychological tactics or not. He turned around abruptly. A body stained with dark green blood fiercely pounced forward. The wind was blowing in his face. It was already close to Chi-Yu's body. At the same time, the cold wind appeared behind him again. Snow Girl also took this opportunity to attack Chi-Yu. What should I do? The moment the lightning struck, Chi-Yu had already reacted. Silverhorn moved from his left hand to his right hand at lightning speed. At the same time, he put his left hand behind his back. The Kirin mirror floated out, covering most of his body. At the same time, the silver horn in his hand pierced towards the green phosphor tree splitting lizard that was about to launch its final attack. However, the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body suddenly sank. When it was still a few meters away from Chi-Yu, it suddenly fell, and Chi-Yu's corner suddenly fell into the air. Just when Chi-Yu thought that the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard had already died in the air, he was shocked to see that the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard had already opened its mouth and fiercely bit down on the tree trunk, its tail whipping out like lightning. The green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's tail was not aimed at Chi-Yu. Instead, it was the green fruit in the middle of the many spiral branches. What a cunning beast! At this moment, Chi-Yu couldn't help but feel a little discouraged, but the reality of the situation already left him with no time to stop the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. With a loud bang, a cold aura that was even more tyrannical than before burst forth in an instant. The huge energy shook Chi-Yu to the point that all the bones in his body felt like they were falling apart. Even if it was the Kirin mirror, in a situation where there wasn't enough energy to support it, it couldn't block the full force of the attack. Chi-Yu let out a blood-curdling scream and suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood. At this moment, the green fruit had already been smashed by the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's huge tail. When the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard swung that attack, Chi-Yu's life also disappeared. However, Chi-Yu seemed to see a trace of a sinister smile on its huge and somewhat terrifying head. Snow Girl's hand was repelled after the attack on Chi-Yu's Kirin mirror. Chi-Yu then spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as Chi-Yu's metaphysics was still gliding down in the air and Snow Girl was about to give him another palm strike, something strange suddenly happened. And the source of the strange change was that shattered fruit. The surrounding space instantly fell into a state of stillness. Even the blood that Chi-Yu spat out was no exception. Snow Girl's hand stopped in midair, and Chi-Yu's body still maintained a somewhat forward posture. The green phosphorus tree splitting lizard, which was originally about to fall from the tree due to its death, also remained motionless. And at the spot where the green fruit was smashed, an incomparably dazzling green light burst forth. What is this? Doubts appeared in the hearts of Chi-Yu, Wen Ting, and Snow Girl almost at the same time. Although they could not move now, it did not affect their ability to think. It's over, it's over. How could I be so stupid? I actually didn't see that it was actually a reincarnation fruit. Oh my God! So unlucky. A voice that had not been heard for a long time sounded from the bottom of Chi-Yu's heart. It was not Wen Ting's voice, but it came from the first messenger that he had obtained, the nine-headed deep-sea nether snake. What do you mean it's over? Senior Nether Snake, are you sure? What is a reincarnation fruit? Xieji's voice also appeared, and it asked the question on behalf of Chi-Yu. Without waiting for the deep-sea Nether Snake to answer, everything around them began to change. In the originally completely still space, the gray spiral-shaped branches began to move. Under the illumination of the huge green light, the gray branches began to spin rapidly. They were originally spiral-shaped, and as they spun, they immediately brought about circles of gray ripples. The gray energy appeared at the same time as the green energy, enveloping the nearest green phosphorus tree splitting lizard, Chi-Yu, and Snow Girl who was behind him. The green and gray light began to distort as it spun rapidly. Chi-Yu and Snow Girl both felt a wave of energy that was not considered strong, but it was irresistible. It was as if they had merged into a huge whirlpool, spinning rapidly. The surrounding scenery started to become blurry, and gradually, everything turned green and gray. The energy wasn't huge, but it was something they couldn't resist at all. They couldn't even move, so how could they struggle out of it? Could a fruit produce such a strange energy? What was this fruit that the deep-sea nether snake called reincarnation fruit? Chi-Yu's last thought sounded in his mind, and then he knew nothing else. At the top of the cliff, the strange ancient tree suddenly disappeared along with the green and gray light. The bodies of Chi-Yu, Snow Girl, and the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard also disappeared along with the ancient tree. The cliff became calm again. If it was not for the large amount of dark green blood on it, it would seem as if nothing had happened. Zagru was sitting on the big bed in the room, cultivating with his eyes closed. Ever since he entered the world, he had thought that he would regress if he did not meditate for a long time. However, he did not expect that his Buddhist power would improve after the battle in Chongqing Temple. The speed of improvement was much faster than when he was in Tibet. Although he did not quite understand why, he no longer had the initial feeling of rejection towards entering the world to cultivate. He opened his eyes abruptly, his clear eyes revealing a trace of golden light. However, this Grandmaster, who had always remained calm in the face of danger, now revealed a look of panic in his eyes. He muttered to himself, "How could this be? How could Chi-Yu's Kirin aura suddenly disappear? Impossible, this is impossible." Zagru got down from the bed in a panic. He murmured a few words of Buddha. Following a layer of pure Buddhist aura, the living Sarira floated out and appeared in front of him out of thin air. The sound of Buddha's name gradually became louder, and the whole room was filled with surging Buddhist aura. Under the full effect of the Buddhist power, a faint golden pattern climbed up his forehead. At this moment, Zagru's eyes had completely turned golden. His gaze looked out through the window, as if he was looking for something. After a long time, Zagru kept the living Sarira. The golden light in his eyes gradually dimmed. Why can't I see his existence, but I don't feel his aura of death? Chi-Yu, what happened to you? I hope my feeling is wrong. You must come back alive. As he pondered, Zagru began to pace back and forth in the room. He walked towards the door a few times, but stopped every time. Finally, he returned to his bed. I can't tell everyone about this, or it will definitely cause a commotion. It seems like I can only wait and hope that Chi-Yu can come back safely. Amitabha, may the Buddha bless me. Greece. In a simple and unadorned hall. The hall was more than 20 meters tall, and on both sides, there were thick stone pillars that needed 2 people to hug to support the hall's ceiling. Counting carefully, there were actually as many as 40 such stone pillars. Behind the stone pillars, in front of the walls of the hall, there were ancient sculptures. Each of them had its own unique characteristic. If someone familiar with Greek mythology came here, they would definitely be able to tell from the characteristics of these sculptures that these were the legendary gods of Greek mythology. In the innermost part of the hall, there was a long table about a meter tall. Yama was sitting there calmly. In front of her in the wide hall, there was a circular pattern on the ground. The pattern looked very exquisite, and in the middle was a simple carving that seemed to be a symbol. And in the middle of the symbol, there was the scepter that Yamu had used in Yanhuang. A faint light was emitted from the scepter. Every time the light shone, there would be a slight energy fluctuation in the hall. Around the circular pattern that was more than 15 meters in diameter, there were 12 more exquisite patterns. On the 12 patterns, 11 of them were seated. According to the order, only the third pattern was empty. Their backs were very straight, and they sat there cross-legged, their bodies emitting a faint glow. Everyone's aura was different, but the one thing they had in common was their calm emotions. It was as though even if the sky collapsed, it would have nothing to do with them. Rain, I suddenly let out a soft cry. She slowly opened her pure and holy purple eyes, which were filled with astonishment. The 11 people below opened their eyes at the same time, and 22 pairs of eyes focused on Yamu. Ilyas asked with concern, "Miss, what's wrong?" Yamu shook her head lightly, and the purple hair behind her swayed. "Nothing, I'm just a little upset." The 11 constellation protectors' eyes revealed a look of surprise. It was the first time they had seen Yamu like this. In the past, this young lady who had inherited the goddess of war and wisdom, Athena, had always been calm and composed. Wisdom was synonymous with her, and today was the first time she had lost her composure. Sitting at the first position of the circular pattern was a handsome man. His gaze was gentle, and he wore a pure white robe. "Miss, how do you feel? Is the calamity about to descend early?" Yamu shook her head and said, "No, this matter has nothing to do with us. It's just that I suddenly felt it." Ilyas said, "Miss, why don't you tell us and we can discuss it together? Maybe we can help you." Yamu sighed and said, "Actually it's nothing. Ilyas, do you still remember those people we met in Yanhuang?" Ilyas's pupils contracted slightly and said, "Miss, are you referring to those Zodiac protector warriors?" Yamu nodded her head lightly and said, "His aura suddenly disappeared, and I can't feel his existence anymore." Ilyas said in surprise, "Miss, you should be talking about Kiran, right?" As he spoke, he couldn't help but recall the moment when Chi-Yu destroyed the Golden Rock Eagle with one punch. At that moment, other than Yamu, Ilyas felt for the first time that the strength of humans was so terrifying. It was also at that moment that the contempt he had for the East completely disappeared. Yamu nodded and said, "Yes, it's him. I don't know why, but every generation of gods that descend are inextricably linked to the Zodiac protector warriors of the East. Sometimes they are strong, and sometimes we are strong. But for our generation, it's the first time that the numbers are so balanced. The last time the 6 of you followed me to Yanhuang, you saw the strength of the Zodiac protector warriors, and you should have a preliminary understanding of their abilities. And the king of the Zodiac protector warriors is Kiran. I don't know why, but ever since I first saw him, his aura has been deeply imprinted in my divine sense. Although the East and West are thousands of miles apart, I can still vaguely feel his existence. The last time, he used energy that far exceeded his own strength to destroy the Golden Rock Eagle, and his strength almost completely disappeared. At that moment I actually felt a sense of relief. Perhaps the heavens arranged for us to descend into this world at the same time, and we are rivals. However, I still feel that there is no reason for him to lose his strength so easily. Although at that time I could feel that his body was on the verge of collapse, and it was almost impossible for him to recover to his previous level, but deep in my heart, I still value him very much. This feeling is a little hard for me to accept. When I was meditating just now, I suddenly felt that his aura had completely disappeared from this world. That's why my mood changed. Shua Su'a continued, "Miss, do you mean that he is dead?" Yamu sighed and said, "Now, according to normal understanding, only death can make him disappear so completely." Shua Su'a smiled and said, "Isn't that good? In the future, we will also have one less competitor. I heard that if the Zodiac protector warriors do not have Kiran, their strength will be far inferior. This is a good thing for us." Yamu frowned slightly and said, "Maybe, but to lose an evenly matched opponent, this kind of feeling is not good. I still feel that he should not die so easily." All the constellation protectors quietened down, their gazes still focused on Yamu. Yamu suddenly stood up and slowly walked past the man at the front and walked to the center of the circular pattern, holding onto her own scepter. "You guys continue to cultivate, I want to go out for a walk, don't follow me, I need peace." With that, she did not take the scepter, but slowly walked out of the hall alone. The constellation protectors did not see, when Yamu walked past them, 2 streams of tears flowed down her cheeks. A cool feeling came from his lips, The sweet and cold water moisturized his dry throat. Water is the source of life. Under the effect of the sweet and cold spring water, Chi Yu's consciousness slowly awoke from his slumber. His entire body felt like it was on fire, as though every cell was protesting. His fingers moved slightly, and immediately affected all the muscles in his body, causing an indescribable pain. There was not a single trace of energy in his body, and the pain in his back was the most intense, causing him to let out a low moan. Another gush of sweet spring water entered his mouth. This time, Chi Yu's senses were clearer. He could clearly feel the 2 sheets of warm spring water that had brought him that sweet spring water. He subconsciously sucked, wanting more. After drinking 3 mouthfuls of spring water, Chi Yu's burning body immediately felt much better, only the pain in his back was still very intense. He slowly opened his eyes. The surrounding light was not strong, but his vision was blurry. Following the recovery of his consciousness, Chi Yu's eyes also slowly regained some spirit. His elegant face also became clearer. "You're awake," Wen Ting said softly. Chi Yu looked at the remaining water droplets on Wen Ting's lips and forced a smile. "The water you fed me was so sweet." He realized that his throat was actually very hoarse, and felt very uncomfortable. Wen Ting let out a long breath and said, "You're finally awake. I was afraid that you would fall asleep and abandon me forever." Chi Yu looked at Wen Ting's reddened eyes and smiled. "Why would I? I can't bear to do that. Where are we? My head hurts a little, let me think about what's going on." With Wen Ting's support, Chi Yu slowly sat up and looked around. This was a stone cave. At this moment he sat up. He could see the outside of the stone cave, but it was a pity that the cave entrance was not big, so he could not see everything outside clearly. Although the inside of the stone cave was not very spacious, it was still quite dry, and the surrounding stone walls were uneven, as if they were naturally formed. Memories slowly appeared in his mind, and Chi Yu remembered everything that had happened before. "I remember now, at that time, I killed the green phosphor-splitting tree lizard, but Snow Girl suddenly attacked me. No wonder my back hurts so much. Ting Ting, how are you? Your body is fine, right? Where are we? Where is Snow Girl?" Wen Ting smiled bitterly. "I don't know where we are. I only woke up 6 hours earlier than you. Snow Girl also woke up 2 hours after I woke up, but I was afraid that she would cause trouble again, so I placed a restriction on her body. Right now, she is sleeping in the depths of the cave. Perhaps it is because I am a giant beast relic. After I woke up, other than the energy in my body feeling weak, there is nothing wrong with my body. After I placed a restriction on Snow Girl, I went out to take a look. There seems to be a large forest outside, and there are many small mountains like the one we are in. However, I really can't see where we are. Because you were still unconscious, I didn't dare to go too far, so I got some water from a nearby stream for you to drink. How are you now? Is your body okay?" Chi Yu smiled bitterly. "My body's condition isn't too good. The meridians in my body have been shaken to a certain extent. The green phosphor-splitting tree lizard didn't hurt me, but our good daughter gave me 2 fierce attacks. At that time, my body was weak, so I could barely resist." Wen Ting's eyes lit up. "That's right, the corpse of the green phosphor-splitting tree lizard is also in the cave. Although it is already dead, it is still a 6,000-year-old vicious beast after all. The energy in its body is very large. Why don't you use your devouring ability to absorb its energy? It should be good for your body." Chi Yu's heart moved and said, "That's right. Before we were swept away by that strange air current, I contacted the deep-sea nether snake again. He seems to know what that fruit is. I think it is called the reincarnation fruit. When my body recovers, we can merge. As long as there is energy, I think I can still contact him, and at that time, I will also know where we are." With Wen Ting's support, Chi Yu came to the depths of the cave. The Snow Girl was placed in a corner by Wen Ting. Although she was quiet, she still looked so lovable. At least the coldness on her face had disappeared. Chi Yu looked at her and sighed. This is really a time bomb. I didn't expect it to explode at the worst time. When Ting said apologetically, "It's all my fault, I didn't think it through, I didn't think that kind of change would happen to her body." Chi-Yu smiled slightly and said, "How can I blame you? She's our daughter. If you want to blame someone, you should blame me as the father first." Hearing Chi-Yu's words, Wen Ting couldn't help but think of how she looked when she fed Chi-Yu water with her mouth. Her pretty face blushed slightly, and she said, "All right, let's absorb the energy first." At this time, she didn't even have the mood to bicker with Chi-Yu. After all, as a woman, coming to a new place, she was more or less afraid. The corpse of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard was lying on the ground. Perhaps because it had lost most of its blood, there wasn't much left. The silver horn was placed beside the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. This silver horn was very strange. Even now, the tip of the horn was still releasing some weak energy, enveloping the NEI pill of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. Seeing the NEI pill and the corpse of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard, Chi-Yu couldn't help but feel refreshed. He nodded to Wen Ting and said, "Help me." The devour skill didn't require a lot of energy, but it still needed a little. Warm and mellow energy entered his back, and Chi-Yu immediately felt refreshed. He didn't dare to be negligent, and his eyes lit up. He folded his hands in front of his chest, held up the Kirin pearl, and breathed in lightly at the corpse of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. Under the effect of the energy, Chi-Yu felt his whole body heat up. With the support of Wen Ting's energy, the Kirin bloodline in his body was immediately mobilized, and an invisible energy was directly transmitted into the Kirin pearl according to the special method of the Devour skill. The Kirin pearl suddenly lit up, and the 4 colors of purple, blue, red, and green flashed at the same time, forming a 4-colored light barrier that enveloped the body of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. A strange scene appeared. Under the effect of the 4-colored light barrier, the corpse of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard gradually emitted a layer of faint green energy aura. In the beginning, the energy aura was very weak, appearing in strands. Under the effect of the 4-colored light barrier, the green energy passed through the filtration of the Kirin pearl and slowly entered Chi-Yu's body. As soon as he received this fresh energy, Chi-Yu immediately felt his whole body shake, and his originally weak and sore body immediately regained its vitality. He didn't enjoy this feeling. In the memory left behind by Wen Ting's father, if he wanted to make the most of the absorbed energy, he needed to circulate it according to the Kirin's cultivation method as much as possible before the energy was absorbed by his empty body. This was the best time for him to cultivate. It could also better replenish his body's potential. With the appearance of the energy in Chi-Yu's body, he no longer needed Wen Ting's help. Wen Ting quietly returned to the entrance of the cave, quietly recovering her body while standing guard for Chi-Yu. After all, this was an unfamiliar environment, and there could be any unknown danger. Chi-Yu used a full 2 hours to completely absorb the energy in the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's body. The pain in his body immediately disappeared after the energy was completely absorbed, and even his spirit became much more vigorous. Although there was still no energy left in his meridians, Chi-Yu couldn't help but be a little excited since it was his first time devouring an ancient beast. If he could devour a large number of beasts to cultivate with, perhaps he could really recover his previous strength. In fact, this green phosphorus tree splitting lizard already had 9,000 years of cultivation. Otherwise, it wouldn't have brought so much trouble to Chi-Yu. If it wasn't for the fact that the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard was not a powerful beast clan, and that it had been caught unprepared by Chi-Yu's 1,000 opportunities and 100 changes Xuanji realm technique, this 9,000-year-old beast would probably have brought even more trouble to Chi-Yu in the 5 clouds. Chi-Yu let out a long sigh. He knew that he had only absorbed a part of the energy. There was still the NEI pill of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard. The energy in the NEI pill should not be less than the lizard's body. However, He knew that the most important thing now was to first know what the reincarnation fruit was, and where he and Wen Ting were now. Therefore, Qi Yu temporarily gave up on the idea of absorbing the NEI pill, and returned to the entrance of the cave to find Wen Ting. "You look much better. How was it? Did you absorb all the energy?" Qi Yu nodded and said, "My body is fine now. Can you merge now? We'd better figure out where we are first." Wen Ting nodded and said, "It won't be a big problem in a short time. Come on." A faint red light floated out. With their previous experience, their fusion became even smoother. With a flash of light, the feeling of having energy again made Qi Yu almost moan in comfort. Qi Yu found that after this merging, he and the right arm that Wen Ting transformed into seemed to have become more tacit, and the energy that Wen Ting felt a little weak at first seemed to have become stronger after merging with his blood. Perhaps it was because he had just absorbed the energy. However, now was not the time to think about this. Qi Yu quickly concentrated his spiritual power and sent a contact signal to the deep-sea nether snake and Xieji. "Well, I finally got in touch again, Qi Yu. I found out that since the day I followed you, bad luck has been with me." The deep-sea nether snake's voice sounded a little sad and angry. Qi Yu could not wait to ask, "Brother Nether Snake, don't complain. Where are we?" The deep-sea nether snake smiled bitterly and said, "If I'm not wrong, we should have been sent back to the era of ancient beasts by the reincarnation fruit." Chapter 113. Circles of light flickered, and the huge body of the deep-sea nether snake appeared out of thin air. Compared to the last time they saw him, his body was at least twice as large, and there were 3 small bumps on his back. The deep-sea nether snake seemed a little emotional. "No, this is absolutely right. The place we are in now should be the era of the ancient beast. We have to start from the reincarnation fruit. I'm afraid even Xieji doesn't know about this. Only an old guy like me, who has lived for nearly 10,000 years, would have an impression." A layer of red light and shadow was projected from Qi Yu's right arm, and Wen Ting, who was in a virtual state, appeared out of thin air. In the case of merging with Qi Yu, the energy of the giant beast living relic that she possessed completely entered Qi Yu's body, but her own energy was restrained. At this time, Wen Ting was also anxious to know the current situation, especially when she heard the deep-sea nether snake say that they were actually in the era of the ancient beast. She immediately used her own energy, and could not wait to appear. In this case, she could rely on the virtual image created by the energy to directly communicate with the outside world, and it would not affect Qi Yu's use of energy after the fusion. Of course, this situation would not happen when Qi Yu was fighting, because at that time, Wen Ting needed to completely focus on the state of energy fusion with Qi Yu, and absolutely could not be distracted. Wen Ting asked, "What is the reincarnation fruit? Why haven't I heard of it before?" Suddenly seeing the strange appearance of the deep-sea nether snake, after a short period of surprise, she quickly returned to normal. After all, part of the blood of the ferocious beasts flowed in her body. The deep-sea nether snake's deep eyes showed a trace of yearning, and it said indifferently, "This has to start from the era of the gods, which was earlier than the era of the ancient beasts. A long, long time ago our world appeared. Legend has it that it was created by the great god Pangu. Although this might not be true, during the era of the gods, there was indeed a group of incomparably powerful experts who were known as gods. Under the joint efforts of these great gods, our world was perfected, and that period was known as the Age of the God. During the Age of the Gods, whether it was your human ancestors or ancient beasts like us, they were all produced or created by the God. During the Age of the Gods there were many strange things. Among them, those that possess great power are known as divine artifacts. Although I have lived for 10,000 years, I am still very far away from the Age of the God. What I am telling you now is just a legend passed down by my ancestors. Among the many divine weapons, there was a very small part called the divine fruit. For example, among the ancient beasts, regardless of whether they were divine beasts or ferocious beasts. As long as they had the strongest bloodline, most of them would be the result of their ancestors consuming the divine fruit during the Age of the Gods. After the era of the gods ended and the gods disappeared for some unknown reason, these divine fruits disappeared along with them. Perhaps it was because the two great gods, Gong Gong and Zhu Rong, almost destroyed this world, and taught the Emperor Heaven a lesson. That was why he ordered the gods to leave. As for whether they are sealed somewhere or have left our world forever, I am not too sure. After the Age of the Gods, we entered the Age of the Ancient Beasts. It is also known as the Barbaric Age. You probably know what happened after that. Chi-Yu asked in surprise, "Big Brother Nether Snake, do gods really exist in this world?" The deep-sea Nether Snake smiled bitterly. "Don't ask me that. I am only telling you the legends that I know. However, judging from the reincarnation fruit that you have encountered, I am afraid that the gods really do exist. The reason why I said so much is to tell you that the reincarnation fruit that you have encountered belongs to the Age of the God. It is one of the three great king fruits, and also the only forbidden fruit among the three great king fruit." Chi-Yu and Wen-Ting looked at each other and saw the astonishment in each other's eyes. What the deep-sea Nether Snake had said was indeed too mysterious for them. Chi-Yu could understand the existence of the ancient beasts, but now that there was a god involved, they could not believe it. Chi-Yu said, "Big Brother Nether Snake, continue. What is the effect of this forbidden fruit?" The deep-sea Nether Snake said, "As the name suggests, the reincarnation fruit naturally has the ability to reincarnate. According to the legend, the reincarnation fruit is the first forbidden fruit in the world. Its greatest effect is that it can produce extremely mysterious energy in an instant. With this energy, it can send anything into reincarnation. It is not the reincarnation of life and death, but the reincarnation of time and space. Back then, only the Emperor of Heaven could control the reincarnation fruit. According to the legend, the Emperor of Heaven used the reincarnation fruit to remove the ability of the condemned and then directly send them into the Age of the Ancient Beasts countless years later. Therefore, there is a special spatial positioning mark on the reincarnation fruit. Once activated, it can randomly send all the surrounding creatures into the Age of the Ancient Beasts. The reincarnation fruit exists as a god exiled by the Emperor of Heaven. You've seen what's happening in front of you. We're obviously not at the place where you dealt with the lizard. Therefore, there's only one explanation. The reincarnation fruit really exists, and we're at a place during the era of the ancient giant beast." Wen-Ting said, "If that is the case, since the Emperor of Heaven took away the god fruit when he took away the gods, how could we have encountered the reincarnation fruit? Moreover, how did you recognize it?" The deep-sea Nether Snake sighed and said, "Nothing is absolute. Although the Emperor of Heaven took away the gods and the god fruit, it is inevitable that there will be some omissions. My ancestor once left behind some of the god fruit's appearance. I did not feel it at the beginning. When the lizard finally smashed the reincarnation fruit and released its energy, the special feeling was exactly the same as what my ancestor had recorded. Coupled with the special shape of the reincarnation tree, I was sure that you had encountered the reincarnation fruit. Chi-Yu Ming, you are an auspicious Kirin. How could you be so unlucky? It's fine if you are unlucky, but why did you have to drag me down with you?" Chi-Yu glanced at the deep-sea Nether Snake and said indifferently, "Going back to the Age of the Ancient Beasts won't do you any harm, right? Aren't the deep-sea Nether Snakes one of the most powerful races among the ferocious beasts? What do you have to worry about?" The deep-sea Nether Snake said angrily, "The problem is that I am in charge now. It can be said that my life is connected to yours. If we were in the sea, of course, there would be nothing to be afraid of. However, you must know that the number of ferocious beasts in the Age of the Ancient Beasts is incomparable to yours. Now, the entire world belongs to the ancient beasts. You humans are still in the most primitive period. In this world, you may encounter powerful ferocious beasts or divine beasts at any time. Don't think that you can do anything just because you are Kirin. Given your current strength, if you encounter a slightly stronger one, I am afraid that you will die immediately. In the age of the ancient beasts, the strong survive and the weak perish. This is the law of nature. I don't need to teach you this, right? Chi-Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Nothing is absolute. Although the reincarnation fruit is a forbidden fruit, as long as you don't eat it or destroy it, then it can produce a kind of purifying energy around it. It is the best assistance for all divine beasts and ferocious beasts to cultivate the Nei pill. If I encountered such a reincarnation fruit, I am afraid that I would have already entered the level of a 10,000-year ferocious beast. The green phosphorus tree splitting lizard that you saw actually has a real cultivation of around 9,000 years. However, the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard is only the most common ferocious beast race. Although its attack is not weak, it is very simple. However, you have also encountered it. Such a common ferocious beast can actually use the silver dragon cover of the three major forbidden techniques. This is naturally the effect of the reincarnation fruit. Therefore, do you think that it will not guard this treasure? Wen Ting said, "What I want to know the most now is, how can we return to our world?" Chi-Yu nodded and said eagerly, "This is also what I want to know." The deep-sea nether snake crawled on the ground and said sadly, "From my point of view, this is almost impossible. Even if you find another reincarnation fruit, it will be useless. At most, you will only be able to go to another era of the ancient beast." Chi-Yu frowned. He did not want to live in this era full of beasts. After all, the Zodiac guardian warrior needed him. In his own era there were also his beloved women and friends. Moreover, with so many modern conveniences, who would want to return to the primitive world? He did not think that he could change this world. Senior Nether Snake, you just said that nothing is absolute. Why are you so sure now? With a flash of light and shadow, the energy form of Xie appeared out of thin air and landed beside the deep-sea nether snake. Chi-Yu's eyes lit up and said, "In theory, there is a way to go back, but it is more difficult." Chi-Yu hurriedly asked, "What is the way?" "It's better than nothing," Xie said. "Although I am not like the deep-sea nether snake, who even knows what the legendary god fruit looks like, I also have some understanding of the era of the gods. During the era of the gods there were the strongest 10 great gods, and among these 10 great gods there was one that could travel through time and space. 10 great divine weapons? Brother Xie, why do I feel that it is getting more and more mysterious?" Chi-Yu scratched his head and looked at the light and shadow of Xie. Xie said, "Since the god fruit exists, then the 10 great divine weapons probably also exist. In this case, there is a possibility that we can go back." The deep-sea nether snake said disdainfully, "You are dreaming. Do you think it is so easy to find the 10 great divine weapons? It's not like you don't know that in the era of ancient behemoths, many mythological beasts and ominous beasts were looking for these divine weapons. I guess that the divine weapons have long been taken away by the Emperor of Heaven. Where can we find them?" Xie argued, "That's not necessarily true. You are a ominous beast, and I am a mythological beast. The experience passed down by us mythological beasts is different from yours. Although the Emperor of Heaven took the gods away from this world, he left the 10 great divine weapons behind. They are all in the most secret places. There are special results or mythological beasts guarding them. They are left in this world like a stabilizing force. Once there is any danger in our world, it is likely that the Emperor of Heaven will guide a hero to get a divine weapon to solve the problem." The deep-sea nether snake said disdainfully, "Are you making up a story? If that's the case, how can I not know?" Xie smiled and said, "Didn't I just say that it is because you are a ominous beast? Most of the ominous beasts are very greedy. If the Emperor of Heaven let you know this information, then would there still be peace in the era of the ancient beasts? Therefore, this matter is only known to the clan of the king of mythological beasts, which is the Kirin clan. Our ancestors, as the most loyal servants of the king of mythological beasts, Kirin, more or less know something about it. However, only the current clan leader of each generation of the Kirin clan knows the exact location. Hearing this, Chiyu thought about it and said, "Brother Xieji, what you mean is that if we want to return to our original world, we must find the current clan leader of the Kirin clan and gain his trust. From him, we must learn the specific location of the 10 great divine weapons and find the one that can travel through time and space?" Xieji nodded and said, "Yes, that's what I mean. The 10 great divine weapons are the most powerful treasures in the world. As long as you get one, you can almost have the power of the gods in the Age of Gods." Chiyu asked, "What are these 10 great divine weapons?" Xieji smiled slightly and said, "You have asked the right person. If it were someone else, I am afraid they wouldn't know." As he said this, he couldn't help but look at the deep-sea nether snake with some pride. The nether snake was dissatisfied and said, "What's there to be proud of? Before the end of the Age of Gods, wasn't the Emperor of Heaven biased towards you mythological beasts? If it weren't for the fact that the number of ominous beasts is far greater than that of mythological beasts, I am afraid we would have been destroyed by you." Xieji ignored the deep-sea nether snake and looked at the eager eyes of Chiyu and Wenting. His eyes showed reverence and slowly said, "The 10 great divine weapons of the ancient times include bell, sword, axe, pot, tower, zither, cauldron, seal, mirror, and stone. Among them, the bell refers to the Eastern Emperor Bell, known as the Gate of Heaven. Its specific power is unknown. It is generally rumored that it is the Gate of Heaven, but according to the ancient wall inscriptions left in the Tianshan Grotto, the Eastern Emperor Bell is the most powerful of the 10 great divine weapons. It is enough to destroy the world and swallow the heavens." Chiyu was flabbergasted as he said, "Destroy the heavens, destroy the earth, and devour the heavens. This is terrible. If someone has such a thing, isn't it equivalent to ruling the world?" Xieji said helplessly, "I don't know whether it is that powerful. I am just telling you what I already know. Most of these are just legends. According to my estimation, although the 10 great divine weapons must have a very huge power. But it is certainly not as terrible as the legends say." Wenting pulled Chiyu and said, "Don't interrupt Brother Xieji. Brother Xieji, please continue. What are the effects of the other divine weapons?" Xieji said, "After the bell is the sword. It is known as the first sword of all times, the Xianyuan sword. It has the strongest attack power. It is a golden ancient sword that is thousands of years old. Legend has it that it was given to your human ancestor, the Xianyuan Huang Emperor, to defeat Chiyu. It contained boundless power and was a divine sword used to slay demons and exterminate demons. Amongst the 10 great divine weapons, the Eastern Emperor Bell is ranked first. However, the strongest divine weapon publicly acknowledged by us, the ancient beasts, is the Xianyuan sword. This is because even though the Eastern Emperor Bell exists in legends, it has never displayed its true power. But the power of the Xianyuan sword is recognized." Chiyu listened with fascination. He and Wenting did not interrupt and quietly listened to Xieji. The third of the 10 great divine weapons is the axe Panguak. It can travel through the void. Legend has it that at the beginning of the world, Pangu woke up from his sleep. Seeing that the world was dark, he took a huge axe and split the sky and earth. Since then, our world has been created. This axe has the power to split the sky and earth and travel through the void. Its power is no less than the Xianyuan sword. Hearing this, Chiyu could not help but interrupt. "So, Pangu axe is the divine weapon we are looking for?" Xieji shook its head and said, "Don't worry. Pangu axe is one of the strongest offensive weapons. Although it can break through the void, it can't travel through time and space. Therefore, the divine weapon you are looking for is not it. Of course, if you can get the Xianyuan sword or Pangu axe, I am afraid that you can do whatever you want in this era of ancient behemoth. But this possibility is very small. That was because the top 3 god weapons had the strongest seals and protection. Not to mention you, even if you gather the power of the whole Kirin clan, you may not be able to break the seal. Only the fated people can really get them, and this situation can only happen under the premise that our world is in a great crisis. When Ting said, "Brother Xieji, then you continue. The next one should be the pot." "What is the pot?" Xieji smiled and said, "Although the top 3 divine weapons are powerful, the one that the ancient beasts are most afraid of is the demon refining pot, which is ranked 4th. The demon refining pot. It has the ability to refine all things. In ancient times, it was called the Jili pot. It is one of the ancient treasures. It has incredible power. It is said that it can create all things, and it also has amazing destructive power. There is a strange space inside. The space is so big that it seems to be able to contain the world. It has an excellent effect on devouring beasts. At the same time, it can also devour a lot of energy and store it. If the top 3 divine weapons play a destructive role, then this demon refining pot can imprison and refine. In a sense, it is more powerful than a simple attack. As he said this, he also glanced at the deep-sea nether snake next to him. The deep-sea nether snake said angrily, "What are you looking at? If you can find the demon refining pot, I will let you refine it." However, the demon refining pot is second only to the Eastern Emperor Bell. It is one of the rarest divine weapons in the world. Moreover, not everyone can use the demon refining pot. Xieji said, "Senior Nether Snake, there is something wrong with what you said. Not only the demon refining pot, but any of the top 10 divine weapons can't be used casually. It can only be used when it recognizes its owner or when there is an extremely coincidental opportunity. Next, I will give you the 5th one. The 5th of the top 10 divine weapons is the Haotian Pagoda. It has the ability to absorb the stars and change the moon. It was originally a treasure of the heaven realm. It has a vast power. It is said that it can subdue all demons and evil spirit. When necessary, it can also subdue immortals and gods. Because of the disappearance of the Haotian Pagoda, as far as I know, although the Emperor of Heaven said that the top 10 divine weapons were left in the world, they were not complete. Some of them did not exist. This Haotian Pagoda is probably one of them. The deep-sea nether snake said, "I am afraid it is normal that there is no one. What you know and what I know are just legends." Xieji said, "Then we can only pray. As long as some of the legends are true, it is possible for us to return to our original world." Qiyu was eager to know which divine weapon could help them return to their original world. He could not help but say, "Brother Nether Snake, do you want Xieji to finish speaking?" Xieji continued, "The 6th one is the zither. Its full name is Fushi Zither. It glows with a gentle white light. Its sound can make people feel peaceful and peaceful. It is said that it has the mysterious power to control the mind of all things. It is said that Fushi's mind control ability is irresistible. The 7th one is the cauldron, Shenong Cauldron. It has the effect of refining immortal medicine. In ancient times, Shenong tasted all kinds of herbs for the common people and laid the foundation of medicine for later generations. In the past, Shenong refined the ancient cauldron of hundreds of medicines. Because of the accumulation of countless elixirs for thousands of years, it is said that it can refine unparalleled magic medicine that even the gods in the heaven realm could not easily obtain. It also hides other mysterious powers. The 8th one is the seal, Kongtong Seal. It is the source of the fountain of youth. It is the guardian divine weapon of the undead dragon clan on the Kongtong Sea. It is engraved with the appearance of the 5 Emperor of Heaven and has a jade dragon coiling around it. Since ancient times, it has been said that the person who obtains it can have the world. Some people also say that it can make people immortal. Since ancient times, many necromancers have gone out to sea to find this seal, but in the end, they only embarked on the road of no return. The jade seal of later generations was modified because of Kongtong, but it has been separated from the original Kongtong seal form. And the ninth one is the divine weapon we need to find. The ninth one should be the mirror, right? Chiyu asked. Xieji nodded and said, yes, the ninth is the Kunlun mirrors, which has the ability to travel through time. In the Kunlun Heavenly Palace in the Kunlun Mountains, the hometown of the immortals, legend has it that there is a divine mirror that has the ability to travel through time and space freely. However, during a grand meeting of the immortals, the divine mirror was stolen and its whereabouts are unknown. Therefore, I don't know if the Kunlun mirrors, like the Haotian Pagoda, has long been lost. However, the Kunlun mirrors are our only hope of going back. Only it has the ability to travel through time and space. Let me mention the last one by the way, the Nuwa stone, which can resurrect and regenerate. The mother of mankind, Nuwa, needed earth to create humans, refined stones to mend the sky, and helped the human race subdue many demons. Since ancient times, she has been admired by the people of the divine prefecture and respected by the descendants of Yen and Huang. It is said that in order to save her beloved daughter who died of illness, Nuwa poured her 10,000 years of cultivation into a colorful jade stone that was left over from Mend the Sky in the past. Since then, the spiritual stone has a special power. Speaking of this, I have finished introducing the 10 great artifacts. It can be said that any ancient artifact we find will have great benefit. However, the Kunlun mirrors are our real goal. I think that the most important thing now is to adapt to the environment in this period. Under the premise of ensuring our safety, we should try our best to find them. Chiyu, this is not like our original world. Now, you only have 1 hour to fight every day. Adapt to this place first, and strive to restore your strength as soon as possible. Contact the mythological beasts, it's best to contact the Kirin clan. This is our way out. Without the help of the mythological beasts, let alone finding the Kunlun mirrors, even our lives can't be guaranteed. Chiyu nodded and said, I understand. Now, this environment is very strange to us. Only by working together can we grasp that faint glimmer of hope. Well, Brother Xieji, Brother Nether Snake, both of you can go back. If there are any problems, I will look for you again. Xieji said, I will definitely go back. As for Senior Nether Snake, it's better to let it stay outside. Maybe it can help you. Although its strength is not strong now, after all, it has a strong foundation in the past. Although coming to the era of the ancient behemoths is a tragedy for us, there are also good things. Don't you feel that in this era, the energy molecules in the air are far richer than in our time? Cultivation will be twice the result with half the effort. Moreover, as long as Senior Nether Snake goes to a place with water, he should have a better way to recover. Deep Sea Nether Snake said, well, I will stay outside. However, Chiyu, now you and I can be said to be one. If we kill the beasts, you can share some with me. Chiyu was stunned and said, what do you mean? Deep Sea Nether Snake smiled and said, although I can't learn the ability of Kirin that belongs to you, the Devour skill that you recently learned is very good. Although I can't fully master it, I can more or less get some superficial knowledge. Chiyu was surprised and said, this means that you can also absorb the energy of the beasts? Deep Sea Nether Snake shook its head and said, not all of them. However, as long as it is a water attribute beast, I can devour it like you. Chiyu was never a stingy person. He smiled slightly and said, this is not a problem. As long as we kill the water attribute beast, you can devour it. Deep Sea Nether Snake's huge eyes suddenly lit up. It smiled and said, if that's the case, as long as my luck is not too bad, maybe it will not take long for me to return to my previous level. Now I suddenly feel that it seems good to return to this era. With a flash of light and shadow, Xieji had returned to Chiyu's body. At this time, Chiyu felt that a lot of energy in his body had been consumed, so he quickly cancelled the fusion with Wenting. A red light lit up, and the phantom image of Wen Ting gradually became solid in the process of fusion with the body, and Chi Yu's right arm disappeared again. Wen Ting said, "Let's take a rest for a while. I have gone outside and observed briefly before. There seems to be no danger nearby. Chi Yu, you should absorb the NEI pill first, and then we will consider what to do." Chi Yu nodded and walked into the cave with Wen Ting. Deep-sea nether snake was obviously in a good mood and took the responsibility of guarding them. Chi Yu and Wen Ting came to the inner cave and saw the snow girl on the ground. Only then did he remember that he and Wen Ting were not the only ones who came this time. Looking at the snow girl, he could not help but have a headache. He could not kill her. After all, half of the snow girl's soul also called him father. However, if it were not for the snow girl, he and Wen Ting would not have been brought to this era by the reincarnation fruit because of the green phosphorus tree splitting lizard's last attack. Speaking of which, she was the culprit. When Chi Yu left, the snow girl's eyes were closed. At this time, she had opened them, but the cold light in her eyes was much weaker. She looked at Chi Yu, and there was even a trace of fear in the depths of her eyes. Chi Yu said impatiently, "Beauty, are you satisfied this time? You must have heard what we said outside just now. Now we have returned to the era of ancient beasts tens of thousands of years ago. Do you still want to kill me? Let alone you, we can't go back either. If you did not sneak attack me at the end, maybe we would have already started to travel around the country. Do you hate me that much? It's like I raped you." Thinking of the 2 sneak attacks by the snow girl, Chi Yu's heart was filled with anger. Wen Ting lightly touched Chi Yu and walked to the side of the snow girl. She said softly, "Don't blame him. At this time, everyone is in a bad mood. But since things have already happened, there is no point in blaming you. I think you also do not want to stay in this era forever. So, now if we want to grasp the only chance to go back, we must work together." Chi Yu was right. From the start until now, we did not have the slightest bit of hostility towards you. Perhaps you have received some strong stimulation in the past, and that is why you are so unreasonable. But in this situation, we have no other choice. The snow girl looked at Wen Ting, and there was a light of hesitation in her eyes. After a while, she slowly opened her mouth and said, "Okay, I will cooperate with you." Chi Yu walked to the side of the snow girl, squatted down and said, "But can we still believe you now?